Sony's new censorship.
Are your waifus in danger?
Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett, back and alongside me, Mr.
Saw Bridges, bringing you guys lucky episode 83. I really hope.
Yeah, it's 83. I'm fairly positive. If it's not, hey, just lynch us, let us know. Bombard us with negative comments on whatever.
Don't do that.
With that in mind, we are a PlayStation podcast, Triangle Squared. If this is your first time joining us, you can normally find us on Monday, every Monday to be in exact. I've never missed an episode ever besides this one Trader Saul who's missed, to be fair, one official episode.
One episode.
So you know what? Pretty good on you, Saul.
Yeah.
But you can find us in video format on YouTube, where we post, like I said, every Monday at 12 p.m. CST and 10 a.m. PST. Did that backwards what I usually do. But if you like what we're doing on there, subscribe, hit the notification bell to let you know what we're doing every Monday at the minimum. But we also have a reader mail coming up, so first Friday of every month you'll be able to see those. And if we have any bonus episodes like impressions for video games or Saul's currently limited run series that he did of Saul Plays, but it may come back.
Hiatus.
Yeah, we're going to see what happens there. You can find those there. But if you like what we're doing there and you like the conversations we're having, we'd love to hear your opinion in the comments below on there. If you want to listen to us in audio-only format, you can find us on podcast services, including Spotify, iTunes, Google Play Music, Google Podcast Now, as it's kind of moving over towards there. If you start to have problems on Google Play Music, look over on Google Podcast. Hopefully you can pick up where you left off from there. And let's see, if you want to talk to us in a crazy, high, fast, output, you can go over to Discord, where we have a bunch of people talking a bunch of stuff pretty often. Or if you want to have more structured conversations, you can find us over on the Facebook group for the show called Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. Search it there, ask to be entered in, and we will accept that and gladly have conversations with you about the games. And you can continue the conversations we start with the episodes over there or on Discord or Twitter, where we are at Triangle SQRD. With that said, the last thing we can talk about is our Patreon, where we love it for the people that do go in and support us, but of course we love the people that don't as well. All the people that support us help us do is just cover a little bit more of the cost of the show, so we can try and keep this ad-free as long as possible. But we don't want to promise anything too much. We just do what we can, and as opportunities come, we may reevaluate with the community, but we will always make sure we talk to you guys first. So you can support us over there at the $1 or $5 tier. $1 is just to support us and get a little cool Discord colored name. We are working on other things all the time, but we have a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff we're currently working on. So if you support us at the $5 tier every quarter, so once every 3 months of the year, so pretty much January, April, July, what are they at? I'm trying to think of all the... It'd be July and then October. There you go. You get a custom case of your choice sent to you as a thank you for being one of our backers. So if you want to go over there and do that, we just put out a new Red Dead case that it's also available for giveaway on the Twitter, but the winner will be announced by the time this episode goes live. So with that said, Saul, do you want to move along into what you have been playing, good sir?
Yeah, so I think we've both been playing somewhat the same games this week.
Now this is interesting because if I recall, we recorded early last week, or last episode.
Yeah.
So since we recorded early, I don't know that I had played any of Destiny 2 yet. So with that said, this is my official episode to talk about my time with Destiny 2 Forsaken, since this is my first roll back with it since the game launched.
What do you think?
Well, obviously, like we said, we've both been playing that. It has surprised me in a lot of ways. And the number one thing is the last episode that we actually did, and it may have been where we talked about it may have been last episode, it may have been the one before that, but you explained Gambit and kind of what the idea behind it was, and I said that I would try it, though I didn't necessarily know that I would like it. I'm happy to report in that it's amazing and it's very fun.
It is. It's very addicting.
It's very fun. It is the most fun I've had doing an online mode, and I think it's because of the nature of what it is. It's so mechanically driven.
It is, and it's very, that game mode is very weird to me because it goes from me being incredibly upset and irrationally angry to the
highest of highs.
Yes, because there are times in which your little gray bar is filled, and it's like, and then Drifter comes over and is like, bank those motes, and then there's people running around killing things. I'm like, bank the motes.
Well, because hold on,
it irritates me so much.
I get it, but there's this play you go where it's like, he says bank my motes right now, but I've only got 4. If I get one more, I can also send a blocker over.
If they have a primeval, it doesn't matter.
Sure, and it depends on what's going on, but
9 times out of 10, that's when I get the most angry, is when they have a primeval like half health and they're still running around killing things. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Bank those motes. We can literally still turn this around. All it needs is one invasion portal and me to go over there or someone to go over there and get a couple kills, and it could turn this around.
Oh, dude, we were so close the other day. Swore we were going to lose.
Yeah.
Swore we were going to lose.
And one invader turned that
around. And hold on. We still lost. But barely. We had the thing where Invader went over, and we were so behind. They got their primeval out when we were at like 30 modes. I had a bad team with me, but it was me and Donovan just rolling through, and the other 2 guys were just screwing around. Me and Donovan were doing okay, but me and Donovan both had bad bouts of luck too, where I had 15 and then something happened and I ended up losing them all.
You ended up dying and you lost them.
So if you haven't played the game, of course, the point is to kill. It's PvP. It's PvE with PvP mixed in. So essentially, like Saul talked about, you're on a map, and essentially what's going on is that you and another team are on the exact same map on different planes of existence, basically.
Right.
And you're both going through, have monsters that spawn out. You kill them, they drop motes. They drop different amounts depending on the quality of the monster and how hard it is to beat. And then, of course, you go back and you bank them. The bank can be blocked by them sending over a certain number of motes at one time, and can send over a small, medium, or a large blocker based off of 5, 10, or 15 motes. So yeah, it was really crazy that we were doing that, and I was like, surely we're going to lose. But then we had a couple of things where Donovan went over and invaded, and during the primeval step, if somebody kills somebody, the primeval continues to get healed. So it's like this weird struggle of where, even though you swear you're going to lose, if you just play your cards right. We got to the point, though, where right at the very end, we both had this little sliver of health, and they just barely got it ahead of us. I mean, it was so close. Me and Donovan were like, that's actually, of all the matches I've done, it's the most pumped I've been.
See, I'm going to say this right now. I'm not exactly proud of how this happened. But I don't normally quit, like rage quit.
Oh, no.
This was not one of those times. So it was me, my buddy Joe, and my buddy Gavin playing. And
I'm assuming Gavin was sucking it up.
That dude goes and grabs heavy ammo and jumps in the invasion portal that dies instantly. It makes me so angry. If I go into an invasion portal, I'm not trying to brag, I normally kill 3 enemies at least.
Yeah.
3 guardians. So pre-sleeper nerf at least. Now they never sleeper, it's kind of hard. But anyways, so I got killed, and this is very early into the game. I got killed because we got invaded, and what I was mad at was that there was this other teammate that was playing with us, and I banked for a small blocker. Gavin was trying to get 10 to bank for a medium, and Joe actually had just been killed by the architects because he got slammed into a wall, so he died. And then we had this other guy who was running around who was not killing anybody, but just running around picking up motes. And I don't normally have a problem with that, but he had 15 and he was not banking them. So it was at like, it was 5 to like 30 in terms of like banked motes. And we got invaded. And then that guy comes over and kills every single one of us. So I, in my little ghost, my death ghost screen, I held triangle to back us out to orbit because I was that mad. Well, we went back into Gambit.
Same match?
And within about, I don't know, 3 minutes of waiting, we got put back in the same match. But there was another person. It was not the same person because we checked the clan tag. And we ended up coming back and winning.
Oh, wow.
Entire match. Fueled by rage, because that just shows you how bad a teammate can be, like really hold you back when they're not playing for the team. But it's a lot of fun. Like so you think that the price you paid for Forsaken and everything has been worth it so far?
Essentially, because we'll get off Gambit because it's one of those things where I wonder if we explained it thoroughly enough to where it sounds like it's worth talking about it.
It's really
sorry
fun.
for rambling on in that, but no, the rest of the stuff for people who are curious about getting back into it, it is the best storyline they've done. It's still not great. Destiny still has a lot of work to do on story in general, but it is the coolest thing that they've done. And one of the biggest things I will say, and I don't feel like this is spoiler at all, is that of all of the expansions so far, because I played them all now. The only thing that made me buy it was that they did include the other 2 expansions into Forsaken. I got Forsaken for 15% off while we were doing that, and I used my PlayStation card points to get it for basically $3 out of pocket.
Right.
That's why really I did it. So really worth my money. But what was interesting is that the same problem that the base story had, and both of the expansions moving into this one, was that Destiny has this, and a lot of sci-fi does, but I get so tired of it, this obsession with you being the chosen one. And you're the chosen one in the first you're in the base game. You're the chosen one in Trials of Osiris. You're not necessarily the chosen one, but Aya, or whatever her name is basically the chosen one for Rasputin and Warmind. And it basically means that all of these stories are floating around, centered around somebody being the chosen one. And for all these dumb reasons, and they almost have to justify it, because like Trials of Osiris is like, why am I going and doing this instead of Ikora? Ikora is the only person in this tower that really has a relationship and a care to want to go after Osiris, so why am I doing it? It's dumb. It's so convenient to the games that it makes the world feel too game-like. There's a balance that you try and strike between being convenient for the game, so it's fun for players to engage in, and then other times where it's like, well, this feels like I'm running out and doing everything because it's trying to be a game. It's too hard.
It's
and that
puts you into the front focus.
Yeah, so that chosen one trope is really relied on in those situations a lot, where it's like, well, we're doing this because it's supposed to be fun for you to do, so we want to make you do everything, and we'll justify it by saying, well, you're the chosen one, you're the only one that could have done it. Well, here's the other problem with that. That works in a single-player game. That doesn't work in a game where you and literally everyone else you play with was apparently the chosen many.
Yeah.
The chosen majority.
And I think that like what they're trying to pass it off as, at least in my head canon, is that the guardians that you are playing with are all the chosen. Like it's you as a group.
But they don't ever say that.
They don't.
You
ever
are the
that.
chosen
Said,
one.
Canon.
So that's why it's an issue there. But this one goes a whole different route, and it does so by being more emotionally invested and having emotional reasons as to why you're going out and doing something, not because fate somehow chose you as one. So that's really good. The rebalancing of the game is good in a lot of ways. There's things I don't like, but I'm still trying to get used to them. It's a mixed bag on this, but I did like, and this, we'll try and wrap up Destiny 2 for those of you that don't care, but I did like in the base game, and it's something that I'm still missing to an extent, infusing and it not being ridiculous to do. Yeah. And I don't mean ridiculous in the sense, but it's like, why should I have to be spending masterwork cores, which I know they're easy enough to get, but why? Well, you get 2 per day from Spider pretty easily.
For 30 shards, yeah. Legendary shards.
Yeah. So, but my essential
you're
thing
going to run
there,
into a problem, though, where you end up dismantling all your stuff for legendary shards to get that, and then don't forget that infusing takes legendary shards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wall you hit, and I hit that wall.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm trying to play a balancing game of it, and it's the flip side of why it's good is that it forces you to finally try new things. Because the beginning of the game, the biggest thing is that you find the one set of armor you like, and then you can continuously infuse it up. Well, 2 things have changed that now. So random rolls being back in the game mean that there's more of a reason to try and get the same weapon with a different roll, or the same armor piece with a different roll. So there's that. But then there's also the side of, again, going back to the negative, if you find the thing with the perfect roll, but you're out of the things to continue buffing it up as a thing, then you're kind of screwed again, because you're forced to change to something else that's going to continue to get your light level up so that you can continue to do more activity.
Yeah.
Well, it's a balancing act.
I don't know if you know this or not, or you may not remember this. In Destiny 2, at least, I don't know if this was the base game feature or if this was launched with
Osiris.
I want to say it was before Osiris. Unlike Destiny 1, you don't have to have everything equipped for it to give you the gear at a high
Yes,
level.
that was at base.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, yeah, you don't have to throw on junk armor
to get better, but it's not about that. It's about being able to do more damage with the weapon that you want.
That is 100% true, yeah.
And being able to keep your current light level up with the item you want. Because here's the thing, even if you're going to get new gear that is that's continuing to go up in your light level, if you're not getting the gear that has the rolls and the pieces that you like, then it still doesn't matter, because you're being forced away from that to go towards a lesser playstyle for yourself.
Exactly. And there's some
it's a
really
cycle.
Cool.
It's an interesting thing, because it forces you to want to play through and then hopefully grind out to get that same piece. But it's just weird when you have random rolls. It's different. It's like, well, if I get the same piece, it will for sure do the same thing. It's why it's a mixed bag, but I do get that it's more engaging for the general Destiny community, and I think that it goes back to more of what they wanted from the first game, and it's basically this game taking so many steps back to be more like the first game continually.
Finally, that's what they should have done at launch. It should have been a reiteration and expand upon what the first game was at the end of the game.
And that's included in collections and triumphs, where they've added back basically the same feature of the Rise of Iron book.
You can go back and get all your shaders. You can go back and get even base armor and stuff in some parts. So it really works out really well. And they, now shaders are free to equip. So like you can literally go to your collections, buy a couple shaders at very minimal cost, and then equip it. So customization now.
Oh, are they not consumed?
No, they are, but you can buy them.
Oh, yeah, okay. I just was curious. Yeah.
They are free to equip on things. So now you don't have to spend Glimmer to equip them. You have no...
On your ship, you still do.
On your ship?
Hmm?
Maybe it's just... I have the Siva ship that was like... It was up for purchase in Eververse or whatever a couple of days ago for Bright Dust, and I bought it. But other than Destiny 2, though, we've been playing, I want to say, a fairly good, healthy amount of Red Dead 2. Nothing like in tens of hours.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're like 5 hours or 4 hours.
Probably
You're past the first section, which
probably
is roughly 2.
Cumulative, I've been playing maybe 3 hours.
Okay. I'm about 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah. I'd be further if the game didn't force me to requit. But
I don't know if we're going to do an impressions on that, so I don't...
I want to, but here's the thing. I want to once I feel like I've gotten enough under my belt to be able to talk about it.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean beating it.
Exactly. Callin Moriarty didn't even beat it in his review.
Yeah, and that's smart because it's a big game and
it's a huge game, yeah.
It's paced not badly. I can't say that yet because I'm not far enough, but it's paced...
Just a slow draw. It's a very slow burn of a game.
Yeah.
I honestly... I can compare it to The Order in a kind of an interesting way in that gameplay is somewhat slow, but combat feels a little bit faster, yet still a little clunky.
Oh, no, the Order feel... Okay.
The order combat felt a little clunky to me, too.
I mean, it felt clunky compared to some third-person shooters, but it feels way better than this game did in third-person to me.
I'm also, I'm used to GTA controls. If you're used to GTA controls...
And I will say that. I don't want to say too much about the game because I'm not far enough in to give it a good thing, but the one thing that playing the game has taught me, because I did not care for Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto 4 was a big letdown, so I pretty much avoided their games. Even Max Payne was kind of had the same problem. They have a huge problem with, and not a problem. I can't quite say that. It's a problem with me. I have a problem with the way that they go about, but a lot of people do, very clunky and non-precise movement and controls. But the bigger thing I want to have is just as a base of what I've already played of the game, even with changing control schemes around. No matter what you do, they have button context problems where they put two very important things that have very important effects on the same button.
I've killed so many people in that game by accidentally pressing L2 and thinking my gun was holstered, and it was not. So that's interesting.
See, the problem with that is not killing. It's that you're aiming. So you're antagonizing someone when you didn't intend to because you didn't holster your weapon, but because they chose to have the communicate with someone button be the same thing as aiming at them. And since the game has an effect when you aim on somebody and they actually react to that, there's problems. You need to be careful with button sensitivity. Another problem, dead bodies. This is somebody I just ran into. Climbing, you climb with square, but you also pick people and stuff up with square. So the problem is context sensitivity. I was trying to climb up onto a train on one part, and there was a dead body there, and it kept making me pick up the body.
Just throw it off the train.
It does it breaks the immersion.
I mean, not really. That's kind of real life, though, right? If you're trying to climb up a train and there's a dead body, you're not going to climb over
the dead body's on the ground. I can climb over it very easily.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like up on
No, he's pretty much underneath the train.
Gotcha. Okay.
But because I'm trying to go there, it's a context sensitivity problem. And with a game that's trying so hard to get you with all these small details,
I mean, there's a couple.
That's something that just it breaks the immersion. Now, of course, that may be the only time I experience it. That's why I'm saying that this is very preliminary, and this isn't going to be, indicative of what I think of the game as a whole. I'm going in as open-minded as possible. I will say this, though. I think Saul's playing in third person. I'm playing entirely in first person.
Right.
At first, I was switching between first person during standard play and then horseback. I was going third person. I just got used to how it feels a little different on first person, but combat feels better to me in first person on the horse. That's why I decided to stick with first person always.
Yeah, I suck at combat on the back of the horse.
Yeah, you know that part when the wolves are coming down? I had to do that in first person.
Don't forget about Deadeye. Deadeye really helps on the back of a horse.
I'm sure, but I'm not used to using it yet.
Yeah,
so.
it's kind of interesting to use.
Regardless, we've both played a decent bit, but we're going to reserve more talk for that as we continue to work our way through it. This is just to put all cards out there, I did not enjoy the first game. I played about 5 to 6 hours of it before I put it down. I will say this game's already done everything that the first game was doing. Playing it in first person is gotten around most of the quirks I have with the way Rockstar continues to make their games. And I know that they do that. There's a good and a bad of that. The good of that is that I do kind of like it when developers make decisions where it's like you always know that this is one of their games. Because like one of those examples is how The Last Guardian still controlled similarly to what you expected from Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. And the thing is like, well, it just feels undeniably like a Team Ico game. Even though it was technically Gem Design, but it was Team Ico and Gem Design, kind of just how they moved around. But so I like that, but it just happens to be in this case, I have more problems with this because I'm not used to it. So I'm working my way through getting used to playing Rockstar games again.
Yeah. I'm curious though, just since we'll move into the drop here in a little bit, but I am really curious as to this. Red Dead has always been historically slower than Grand Theft Auto games.
Yes, and it's because it's less satire.
And yeah, what I'm really curious as to what all is implemented from this attention to detail to the next Grand Theft Auto.
I don't know, because I think that the tone of what they're trying to do is very different. I don't think Grand Theft Auto,
eating, though, like in San Andreas,
maybe
stuff like that could return.
Maybe, but here's even in San Andreas, and people somewhat remember that. But the thing is that too much detail definitely pulls from the pacing of a game that's meant to be funny and satiring, and it's one of those things where I think that some of the detail will come, like, ground deformation and cloth and animation, how precise the animations look to what's going on. I think they'll do stuff like that. I could see the first person mode coming back since first person made its way from Grand Theft Auto 5's PS4, Xbox One release into this game. Yeah. And it's far better in this game than what I saw and played of the little bit of Grand Theft Auto 5 I did play in first person, which was very, very, very limited. Yeah. But there's a lot of options, and I think that the game feels good in that. So maybe that will carry over as a gameplay design, But I can't. I think some of it will. I think some of it's too much for what people would expect
Grand Theft Auto to be. Which I think that a lot of people say that San Andreas is their favorite game. And it's definitely one of mine. So I wouldn't be disappointed if a couple things made it. People have always asked for gas to be a thing in Grand Theft Auto. Do not make gas a thing, please. Mm-mm. I do not want a game based on me stealing cars to have to stop from a police chase to get gas, or to steal a car and then to run out of gas in a police chase.
See, that's like wanting a racing game, like an arcade racer. That's like wanting an arcade racer to make you stop for gas.
Yeah, or stop at the pits. And
it's like, no, come on now. That's not. Yeah, that's for sim racing. Let me sim race.
Need for Speed game did that. There was a Need for Speed game. Never mind. No, it's not. I'm thinking of Burnout. That had you go through the car washes or whatever.
Paradise? Because Paradise you didn't have to refuel, but it would change your color,
it'd fix your cosmetic
fix your cosmetic damages. Yeah.
For me, I kind of wish there was a press of a button in that kind of game to just reset everything. But
sure,
being what it was. But I guess Red Dead and Destiny, pretty much it, right?
Man, yeah, I don't think I played anything else. I've not played many games this week at all. I didn't get to play near as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, me neither.
Definitely didn't play as much Red Dead as I wanted to. So we're gonna move into the hop, but one thing we're gonna do. And moving to the hop. Yep. So because I was going to make a joke towards it. But anyway, we're going to move into the drop. But one thing that we're going to do is technically answer a reader mail just because it's more of a reader request, which is No Fate, Mr. Sean Neo asking us, with Red Dead coming out, he says he's not into Westerns, and with all the hype around Red Dead Redemption 2, he thinks it's possible to miss out on some hidden gems. What other games are out this week should I keep my eye on?
Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu, and it's funnily enough the first game on the list. I think that's a very interesting looking game. It's focused. They are very back and forth on how much I like their games, but I tend to give their games a try because they're one of those AA developers that does a pretty good job. I love Vampire, and if this is doing anything close to that in terms of trying to be ambitious in certain areas, and I'm good there. But I think it's also an interesting thing to bring up that he's very right. Certain games tend to overshadow games that are great. And one game that suffered from that was Dark Sector on PS3. I'm pretty sure it was Gears of War 2 that came out and overshadowed it because Gears was such a phenomenon.
I'm pretty sure that was it too, actually.
Yeah, and that's just one of those weird things where sometimes games are so hyped up that they end up squashing games that are actually great that come out around them. So good on you for noticing that, Sean. And I'm hoping that, last week, I don't know what you're into, but My Hero Academia, I've heard a lot of great things from people that actually like the show and the anime. If that's something that you're interested in, go play that. There's been complaints in certain areas on it. But last week was pretty much going to be dominated by Red Dead. Now, moving forward, while people continue to give so much time to Red Dead, you have other games to play. I think Call of Cthulhu is a good one. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up just yet because of the fact that I'm already balancing between the two games, but I do intend to get it.
Yeah, that's a kind of a weekend buy. But I guess I will hop into the drop. For those that don't know, the drop is this week's PlayStation releases coming out starting the Tuesday of the week and can be expanding all the way until Friday. So starting tomorrow from the podcast airs, you guys are going to be looking forward to some of these great games. First on the list, we have Call of Cthulhu, as we said before, for PS4. We have Cronus Arc for PS4 and a PS Vita digital cross-buy title. Or no, sorry, retail cross-buy. But, cross-buy is digitally. So that's kind of interesting.
That is, okay, yeah.
We have Deathmark for PS4 and PS Vita.
That's going to be that game's going to be one of the last physical Vita games.
Really?
Yeah, they've stopped producing they're stopping producing the cartridges.
Huh.
They put in the last orders.
Interesting. We have Dream Daddy Dad Rector's cut for PS4. Something about saying Dad and Rector I just don't like.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like an erect dad, and that's not what we want at all.
I mean,
even though that's kind of the point of the game, isn't it?
I guess that is true. We have Infinite Adventures for PS4, Legends of Catalonia: The Land of Barcelona for PSVR, Nico Para for Volume 1 for PS4, Paper Dolls for PSVR, The Quiet Man Limited Bundle for PS4.
I have like the most morbid curiosity about that game because
I don't think I'm gonna like
the pre-roll footage looks so weird, but I'm interested in seeing what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I'm not.
It depends. How much is it? Is it
probably
like 20? I think that's right. I think
Yeah.
that's right.
We have Redeemer Enhanced Edition for PS4, Revenge of the Bird King for PS Vita, Shadow of the Loot Box for PS4, Super Pixel Racers for PS4, Super Volley Blast for PS4, Teiko no Tatsujin Drum Session for PS4, and that's the last one on the list. So
here's that Pixel Racers
has a cute art.
The art looks cool, and I think I may. So if you like those kind of ideas, go check that game out. Who knows?
Yeah.
You may end up like a little cute looking racing game. And I mean, like it's more just like interesting because it's like trying to be 8-bit, but it's like against the hyper realistic dirt and dust. I don't know. We'll see how it actually ends up coming around too. But with that said, I'm going to move on into the news, and the news is interesting, though not too terribly long this week. With a week dominated by Red Dead, we didn't want to inundate you with that, so we'll move into the first thing, which is the long announced but little seen Medieval remake has finally received some info, as well as a promise for a trailer soon. The game is indeed a full remake as opposed to just a remaster, which was one of the first things I really wanted to know when they talked about it. So it's good to see it'll be a full remake. I'm hoping so far as to say in the same vein as what we saw with Shadow of the Colossus and even the Crash Bandicoot games. I think that the series lends itself well to a cartoony look. So hopefully we get just a really polished, great-looking remake. Some more stuff we know is it's going to be developed by a developer called Other Ocean Interactive, which will include some members of Gorilla Cambridge. If you don't know, that's actually the studio that was originally involved. So SCEE Cambridge was the original developer for Medieval, Medieval 2, and the reimagining of Medieval 1 on PSP, which actually, when they weren't saying if it was going to be a remake or a remaster, I expected it to be a remaster, like they did with Parappa and Loco Roco, where they use their PSP emulator that lets you flip in 4K textures on the fly. And I thought that they were just going to use Medieval Resurrection and basically use it and make it 4K, which would make it look sharp, and it's not a bad looking game. It's actually a fun game. But I'm glad it's not that.
Apparently, Parappa has had a fair share of issues for its HD remaster, so I'm kind of glad it didn't.
Loco Roco didn't, and nor did Patapon. So
really,
it's a mixture. It's a mixture of how things go. Or at least from what I've seen, I didn't.
Loco's pretty good.
I love Loco Roco. It's a great game. So let's see.
Hey Blake, that's another one for your PSP.
Oh, Loco Roco. Yeah, it's an interesting game, and actually, if your kids. It's a good kid game, too, as well, because it's not hard to play. It makes a lot of sense. But lastly, it will receive a new trailer on Halloween at 7 a.m. PST, so that's pretty early. Going to be excited for that Wednesday morning. Team Sonic Racing, the new spinoff of the Sonic Kart Racer series, has been delayed to May 21st, 2019, as opposed to its original release plans this fall. The claim is to use the extra time to make the best gameplay experience possible, which isn't surprising after the game really didn't have that big of a blow up after they showed it off. A lot of people really like the All-Star series, which is made by the same group. It's still Sumo Digital. But they're going a different direction with this one. So we'll see how that ends up working, but hopefully it does well for the game. And that kind of works out because that Nintendo Kart Racer came out. So kart races are an interesting genre anyway. Let this kind of just take over the couple of kart races that are out, and then let them take over next spring, and hopefully that'll do well.
Yeah.
EA and DICE announced that Battlefield 5 Battle Royale mode will not launch with the game. It is instead planned for release in March of next year. The information was laid out in a roadmap for the game that details all the content plans going forward. So if you are interested in the game, go check that out. It talks about everything that they're doing. But that is a very interesting move. When you're going against Call of Duty...
Dead on arrival.
That's going to be... And more importantly, when you're going against Call of Duty... in a year where they're launching with Blackout out there and it's getting so much attention, I feel like it's a really missed opportunity, because the thing about it is you would probably get a couple people who liked Blackout to even just try the game, pick up the game, help sales, and of course maybe keep the online thing going if you had that. Now, what you end up risking is people going, well, I have Fortnite and I have Call of Duty, both of which I enjoy the Battle Royale mode on. And that's mostly what I'm interested in playing. Do I really want to stop playing that to go potentially try Battlefield 5, which I may not like since it doesn't have Battle Royale, right?
Yeah, now you have no option. So
it's just interesting.
Weird.
In a time that's being dominated by the idea of Battle Royale and seeing it in so many new ways, like we see with Blackout and we were hoping to see with this year. It's also interesting that they came out so on top with this at E3 this year, saying, yeah, we're going to have Battle Royale, and now it's not even coming until next year.
And that's the sad thing, is that by then Call of Duty's going to have the market cornered.
After a delay, too.
Yeah, that's right. Because it went from October to November. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
sad.
Interesting to say the least. Despite no update on Borderlands 3, it appears that Gearbox is starting work on a new IP. A tweet from new executive producer for the project claims that it will be a tentpole franchise for the company and that it aims to be something for all players, be it, quote, whether you are 6 or 60, end quote. I love those kind of generalizations. It's like you try and look, it's like, what
about a 5-year-old or 61-year-old? Where are they at?
They're outside of the spectrum, sadly. But interesting to see that they are not shying away from doing new IP after Battleborn was like a colossal failure for them.
A massive failure. The fact that game was $20 like a month and a half after
Here's
launch.
what I will imagine that they're trying to learn from Battleborn.
Everything.
Look around at what else is already announced. Depending on how long this is going to take them to make, which new IPs tend to take a long time, try and look at the markets and figure out what's going, and not release something like Battleborn against something like Overwatch.
First-person pinball game. Never been done.
Are you sure? I actually feel like I've heard that.
I really hope not.
Where you're a spaceship and you get to go and
no, you're a person. You have a big old baton, and you have to and you just run around the map hitting a big old silver ball around.
But then how do physics bounce you back?
It doesn't bounce you back. You have to bounce the ball around the map, and then you have two teams.
Well, what you could do is that the force of hitting the object would have a negative. It would be, and you could call it like
you're
Newton's third law or whatever. Isn't that the law
bumper,
that's?
Though. You're the bumper running around trying to just hit the ball. It's basically like
you're hitting the ball. I thought you were talking about with a hammer hitting the things.
No.
But hitting them requires an equal force. So you have to strategically plan where you're going to hit it, or it could throw you down.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Extreme baseball, basically, but with a net. Or like a hole that the ball goes into.
I don't know. That's interesting, though. And it's interesting to see them going this far, because all you keep hearing from them is stuff that's not Borderlands 3, but they keep saying Borderlands 3 is real. So I wonder what they're doing with it. And if this is going to be the same idea of what you see with Red Dead, where it's an extreme evolution of the game, going from Borderlands 2 to what 3 is. Like, are they really trying to reinvent it that much that you need 6 years of development?
It's hard, too, with Destiny being a thing.
Well, and how much did Battleborn? Have they had a team on it since Borderlands 2, or did Battleborn take precedence, and then they've only actually worked on Borderlands for like 4 years?
Battleborn took precedence.
I don't know. They really banked on the wrong thing
with all
there.
The marketing they had.
I'd imagine they probably had a skeleton team dealing with Borderlands 3 from the get-go, though. You know, because you got to think about this. It is Borderlands moving into next gen finally, because we saw the pre-sequel come from a different developer, and now we're seeing this one come from the home developer, even though I think that they were involved in some sense on the pre-sequel. But
yeah, we'll see. Isn't Randy Pitchford still head of
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So
he doesn't come off to me as well planned. Like, I'm not trying to insult him, but
definitely considering he got scammed.
Yeah. So
but look,
twice by, like, wasn't it his own family too?
No, it was like a personal assistant that he hired.
Oh, okay. I really thought it was like his brother-in-law or something.
No, it's a personal assistant that a lot of people hired from the Frisco area of Texas. But anyway, one thing I thought was interesting that I just want to shout out, they have confirmed that free movement will be included in Borderlands 2 VR.
Good.
To me, I don't know if I saw it. Maybe I misunderstood something going in, but they did confirm that free movement will be available, not just teleportation. They did not flat out deny that PSVR aim or PS aim controller will be supported, but they did the old classic, we have no word or news on controllers at this time.
Yeah, but there's still no co-op, so no buy.
Honestly, the co-op is, as long as the VR aim is supported, I personally will play it.
I don't find Borderlands fun at all by myself.
I think that in first person with a gun where you're doing the movements yourself, it becomes fun. That's why I'm at least willing to try it if VR aim is supported.
Maybe.
But
I just don't think Borderlands 3 will be a huge thing, regardless of with all the looter shooters we have right now. There's so many.
Yeah, that's true.
You have Warframe, which is massive for being free. You have Destiny 2, which just made a massive comeback.
That's why I'm wondering if they're wanting to really change the game.
What were they going to change it to?
I don't know.
I don't like. I mean,
they have to keep some of the DNA alive, but
yeah, they have to keep like the humor, the art style, that kind of stuff. But like, what made Borderlands won't be its backbone anymore, and it will feel like a different game.
But I don't think that what made Borderlands is going to suffice for a next gen game of that caliber anyway.
Oh, sure. It's the same formula as Destiny almost. You basically group up with friends, you go kill enemies,
but doing it
kill bosses.
If you're doing it the same as you were last gen and just doing it next gen and nothing looks better except for the graphics, I don't think that's exactly what people want.
I'm sure you can,
because we've had 3 games of the same style already. And actually the pre-sequel did a little bit to try and change it up mechanically.
3 games?
Yeah, 1, 2, and the pre-sequel.
Oh, I thought you meant like 3 games besides the Borderlands series.
No. I just mean specifically in the Borderlands thing. So, I don't know. But we will move on to the next thing, which is pretty cool. An interesting charity auction has been started by Bethesda in partnership with Microsoft and Hypebeast called Helmets for Habitats. Replica power armor helmets of various designs and colors are being auctioned away, with the proceeds going towards Habitat for Humanity, which we don't know who they are. They go over like 70 plus countries, basically trying to get housing and basic places to live for people so that they have a decent quality of life, which is a pretty cool thing to support. There are 82 different helmets on auction right now, from now until from November 14th. It's already been going on for a little while. They are up there. Some of the lowest ones right now are at like 179, but some of the highest ones are at like 2,500. There's one that's got like a beer holder on its head, and it's 2 Nuka-Colas with the things coming down to the mouth.
That's kind of cool.
And it's up to like 2,500. It's really ridiculous.
Oh my gosh.
Next up, though, Square Enix patched the Kingdom Hearts 1.5 plus 2.5 Remix and 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue to unlock all the share functionality that was previously locked away from the game. So that includes screenshots, and you can even actually do capture for the movie titles. So you will probably be able to find those shortly on YouTube, which I think you already probably can.
Especially by the release of this episode, I would think.
But more easily, because here's the thing. People before were having to use capture stuff to get it.
Yeah.
So... It's one of those interesting things. I think Kiki said he was going to be streaming it probably because he can now.
Right.
So he can stream it directly from his PlayStation.
Did they ever fix that with Persona 5?
I don't think so. A lot of Japanese games do not mess with that.
That's
Tales
crazy.
does the same thing. It stops you from sharing. As soon as the cutscene starts, you are done. You can't share a thing.
See, and I remember one of the developers of Persona said that it's only a temporary thing to prevent spoilers
Early on.
But
they may have fixed it.
I would think so, but I don't ever remember reading an article in which people were saying they did. But those are articles
I don't know.
that can be missed.
And that game is still played by a lot of people. So.
Oh, it's fantastic. That's why.
Next up, Sony and stark contrast to Nintendo tend to make a habit of lowering prices on their exclusives after a reasonable amount of time has passed since launch. With that said, Sony recently dropped the prices on a number of games as follows. Gran Turismo Sport was $40. It's now $19.99. God of War was obviously full priced. It is now $39.99, which is great. If you haven't played it yet, it's a good time to get it. Detroit Become Human, also down to $39.99 from full price. MLB The Show 18 is down from $39.99. It's now $29.99. Best-selling baseball, really.
I'll say that, yeah, the only one.
Uncharted The Lost Legacy is down from $30 to $20 now, so $19.99. Shadow of the Colossus was also $40. It's down to $19.99 as well. Hidden Agenda was $10. It's now $5. That's You, same, SingStar Celebration, and Knowledge is Power. So those last 4, just to be clear, are PlayLink titles. It's not surprising that they're so cheap.
My mind's blown that That's You was ever $10.
Considering it was given away for free for like 2 months on PS Plus.
Okay. Then that makes more sense. That's crazy that that game was $10.
No, it wasn't $10 at launch anyway. I think it was $20 at launch.
Oh, that's even worse.
The PlayLink initiative did not appear to pan out very well for them, and I don't even think we're going to get. I don't think we're going to get some of the games that they talked about, like the Erica game that they showed off. I'm pretty sure that's dead in the water.
Yeah.
But I don't know because you haven't seen an article on it. But it's one of those games that didn't just receive a lot of attention, so nobody's really begging for it. I was at least interested in trying it because I think that the medium. I think of all the games they did for the PlayLink initiative, Hidden Agenda made the most sense because people did it. It looked great, and I have it. I still haven't got a chance to play it because I'm going to play it with my wife.
Isn't it on the same engine?
It's Unreal Engine 4.
Oh, okay.
Actually, but it's made by the people who obviously did Until Dawn.
Right.
And one of the things that they saw with people doing Until Dawn, and even they noticed that in Detroit as well, so they utilized that on PSX when they had the whole crowd decide what to do. That was something they noticed in streams that people were doing, where everybody's playing together and just yelling out things they wanted to see.
It's fun when you're watching a stream like that.
That idea is even better when you have a room full of people. You know, there's 4 people watching this movie thing play out, but they're all somehow affecting the way it's going to play out. That's a cool idea. Of all of them, I think that makes the most sense in terms of a traditional game. That's you. SingStar and Knowledge's Power are all party games that are obviously going to be short-lived, but it goes to show you that the games that were trying to do something they like Hidden Agenda, and that's still not a game, but it's more traditional. It's still casual enough that anybody could pull it off.
I think there are better things and at better prices that you can pay for in real life, not video games.
Well,
that are more fun for parties like that.
Sure.
Not even parties, but groups of people will try to do something.
Sure, I agree. It's just what's more interesting is that this started at the same time as that they announced NAC 2 and their move, or not announced, but they started talking about NAC 2 and their move towards wanting to be more consumer, more friendly with casual market instead of being so hardcore given. And I think what's interesting is that it goes to show that that's just not their bread and butter, and that I don't think people come to them for that necessarily.
No.
I still think it's a market they need to have a foot in, which I think you see that here and there, like with Astrobot for VR. They're proving with great scores, great sales of that. It's getting even people to buy VR. But it's one of those games where we know that Sony can do it, but they just don't do it often enough. It does seem like most of the studios that are doing that for them are Japan Studio, because NAC and NAC 2 and then Astrobot was all Japan Studio.
I'm
trying to think of another game that came out. I mean, you could think about like the You Don't Know Jack series that came back to PS4 now. But I don't know. I don't know how well those games even do. I've actually never even looked into sales numbers. I would be curious to see if they sell really well or not.
Call me old-fashioned, quote unquote, but like if I'm with a group of friends, I think tabletop games are way more the way to go.
Yeah.
Tabletop's like a TV show or movie on the back.
Because you're wrapped around each other. Yep. You can't really do that with a TV. You're always going to be side by side with everyone.
Like, because some of those games were played on off phones or bases of phones, weren't they?
Sure, but you still have a screen that was the hub, so you'd have to be beside each other.
Well, I'm talking about in terms of like having stuff you're trying to do maybe against other people that you can't like have your phone showing them.
Sure. I don't know.
If I remember correctly, there was a game like that where you didn't really want anybody to see your phone or what you're picking.
Maybe, I'm not sure. Because there was, I can't even remember all of the PlayLink initiative games, but that's okay. The last thing up on the list is the PSN name change beta has stirred up some controversy as people are really finally realizing the very issues that Sony warned of. This is not surprising at all. Players who change their name could potentially lose access to the purchases, save progress, and still potentially have your original ID show up publicly, depending on the situation. They did work in a feature to where if you have these issues, you can revert back to your original ID, which should remedy them. But it does lead to ask, and I really think this is interesting, why did Sony even feel it necessary to give in?
Yeah, like what?
Considering that this was going to have a huge potential for problems for the majority of their user base.
It's not worth it. It's just strictly not worth it. I mean,
it's a lose-lose situation, right? Because here's the thing. Well, out of really true curiosity, how do you feel like they could win with this? Because the only upside I potentially see to it, which we've already kind of seen, is that they did have a small burst of good PR.
I'm just saying you're not necessarily going to lose if you can revert back and revert those changes, like purchases locked and stuff like that.
So I'm in a lose-lose situation for Sony as a whole. They're doing something that has a high chance of getting people to look at them in a very negative light.
I think they were trying to win over the people who were really complaining about it, which neither one of us have ever really talked about that.
I know.
Complained about it.
That's why I think it's interesting, though, because, my thing about crossplay, and they went so long doing this crossplay, but they eventually gave in. But crossplay makes more sense because there's not as many negatives in terms of immediate negatives like this as there is for something like this. The thing about this is that both of them gave them good PR when they finally spoke up on them.
Of course.
But the thing about the crossplay is just more of a business decision. In the long term, it may hurt some of their numbers, but it looks good on PR, and it continues to look good on PR. This only looks good on PR in the days prior to it coming out. Even though they warned properly of it, it's the same culture that tends to attack one thing because of that's small also praise one thing because something's small. So it's easy to go, Sony's doing great. And then the problem with that is that the incredible flip that's going to happen is you're going to have a bright because of that. As soon as somebody has a problem and this goes crazy, what have you seen? Everybody turns sour and goes, oh my God, Sony made a stupid decision. Why are they doing this? This is messed up. Can't believe they're doing this to their users. But this is why I say it's not necessarily the fault of the people who are asking for it. I think it's the fault of Sony for not doubling down and going, look, we need you to understand why we cannot adequately do this and why we are opting out of doing it. And go, hey, look, for us to adequately do this, we want to explain why it's a problem to begin with and why Xbox can do it so easily, but why we can't. We made this decision early on. It's been 10 years since we made that decision plus, but we can't do anything to back out of that decision because we are where we are and we're the biggest people. We're the biggest console right now. We have the biggest platform, the most people online. So for us to do that, would require us to completely launch a new service, which would require us to bring PlayStation Network down to adequately fix this or relaunch the service and still potentially make you lose all of your trophies and all your purchases, and that it's too much work for us to adequately pull this off. So instead, we're gonna put our foot in the ground and say, look, we understand that it's unfortunate that this is a problem, but we can't do anything about it. And I think that honestly and truthfully, they should have done that because I think not even saying silent, I think coming out with one statement and then going silent after that and just going, look, we have a public statement on this now. This is what it is. We weighed all of our options. It was too much negative to outweigh. The negative outweighs the little bit of positive that's there. So what we're going to do is instead stick to our guns and say this is what we believe, and we feel like this is the best for the majority of our customers, even if in the moment they don't feel like it. And we're going to stick to our guns here and then leave it alone. And I think that they would have had a much better time because of it.
I agree somewhat. I do think that for those that don't know, Podcast Beyond, like the original probably the greatest. No, not probably. It is probably the highest watched PlayStation podcast ever. Right?
Honestly, I don't know.
I don't know those numbers compared to PS I Love You, but like I do know that it's still ongoing. It's still with one of the biggest gaming websites in the world with IGN. I don't know if they still do this, but I know back in the day when Greg Miller and Callin were on,
they would always do the section
at the very end about the name change and like basically what was your name, why did you create it, and then like things you got made fun of for because of it, and kind of a mixture of those. So I do think there is a group that does want to change because it's those people who submitted that.
They absolutely do. And I don't want to say that they don't exist. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have that.
I don't think
what I'm saying is that Sony,
what was at stake.
Exactly. I think that, yeah,
the people.
Sony
did a good enough job of clarifying what was at stake.
Yeah.
In the beginning.
Well, they really did clearly say that these are the issues, but the thing is
when
that
John Layden announced it at PSX, he didn't say
no. But when they finally, all he said at PSX was, "We're working on stuff to hopefully have something." When they finally came out with their official statement,
he should have disclaimed it right there. Like, but we don't know
maybe
how
he didn't,
well it's going to work.
Maybe he didn't know enough yet to be able to clearly say it.
But any kind of massive advancement in a company like this should it should be on the person who is obviously a fan of that company to know, like, hey, this may not work out the way I'm thinking.
Well,
but at the same time, it's the way it was announced, plus the way it was handled, and then the positivity, even the mention of it at E3. It's one of those things that's
at E3.
Yeah, didn't they mention it at E3?
Not that I was aware of.
I thought they did.
Not that I was aware of.
Okay, I
I could have missed it.
I thought after the Last of Us thing, they when they were outside sitting at the table, they mentioned it, but I could be wrong. But I do think that when they announce something like this, or when they are,
it's better to be overly cautious about.
Yes, and
I agree,
and that's what I always said about crossplay too. Like, hey, you guys, Fortnite's crossplay, but we're looking forward to seeing you guys until the end of this gen crossplaying with Fortnite.
And then we'll reevaluate whether or not,
Exactly. You're very clear. You're very concise on what you're talking about these announcements. And I do think that they almost...
But it's hard to set expectations because...
Well, it depends, though. It's not hard to set expectations if you are 100% concise to the T about it.
The reason it's hard to set expectations is because not everybody is up to date. Here's the thing. Sony made a big PlayStation blog update about it and had all the information that really was there, including these potential problems.
Right.
But here's the problem. Not everybody sees that. Not everybody here's the way that information spreading works. The most basic piece of the information is what spreads the quickest. So what ended up spreading is people going, guys, we're going to be able to change our name change. So people got excited about that. And that's why it looks even worse on them, is that it looks so good for the people that didn't already know that they had built in the expectation of, hey, it may not work out right. And if it doesn't, because this goes to show, even Blake, right? Blake doesn't mess with PlayStation. He doesn't have one anymore. So when we were talking about it, he was unaware that they even had a feature to revert back to your old ID, because he's hearing these things through the grapevine. He's not hearing it the same way because he's not as into what PlayStation is doing in the same sense, which is fine. It makes sense for someone who's in his position, definitely playing Xbox. But there are people who love PlayStation who still don't keep up with bleeding edge news that much. So what they hear instead is, or they see a headline and go, PSN name change is coming, and then they don't read the article, and instead they just go, great, we're going to be able to change our names.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say like he jumped on that and didn't realize it. But
sure,
and it's the way information travels, which is why it's up to the company to deliver a concise way on why it shouldn't.
But even if you do,
up like that.
But even if you do, you can't control the fact that people are always going to take the simplest part of the message and spread that. I mean, it's just how it goes, and it's an unfortunate way.
I think the PSX announcement was a mistake.
I think that's a reasonable argument.
I mean, I do. I think that the way he brought it up, I think it was only for hype at that point, because there was. I don't think they didn't know what they were getting into at that point.
Here's the thing.
Clear.
Just to be, and then we'll move off of this so we don't spend too much time on it. But what was interesting is that before that is when the rumors that basically lead us to where we are now started, about it being a nickname that goes on top, and games will have to be coded in a way that they see it.
Not so much rumors, that people familiar with the way the architecture of the online system for PS or Sony works.
These were developers saying that they were getting contacted about this new way of developing the games and coding it to where it looks, instead of for your ID, it looks for your nickname. So that was 2016 or maybe early 2017. So this was before the PSX 2017 even happened that we heard these rumors. So this is something that Sony's been messing with for at least 2 years, if not more.
Right, and the hardcore fans kind of knew about that, which is why. So
that's why I don't.
Their announcement should have been tailored more towards those fans that are more likely to know about it than the people not, because then that gives them the backbone of the, and I'm not gonna say niche group, because at this point hardcore fans on PlayStation outnumber probably Xbox and Switch combined, I would think, but
I don't know,
they're both going pretty fast at this point. But I do think that the way they should have said it at PSX is like, you guys have been wanting name changes. By this time next year, we're gonna have some information for you guys about name changes, but we want you guys to know we're working some kinks out. This doesn't come at a potential loss, but you're going to have to stay tuned, and we'll let everyone know. They should have been very cautious about the way, because something tells me either A, they did not know the way this was going to work when Sean announced it in the first place.
I think that they just weren't sure enough that there were going to be this many negatives. They might have thought that there was a way to code around
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they did not know that these potential problems are going to happen, or B, they did know and they were just doing it for the hype factor to end off the show.
I don't know. I think it's also the nature of PSX. It's
the people there, though. That's the hardcore fans I'm talking about.
I agree, but I think PSX has got such a laid-back nature that you can make more nonchalant-sounding comments than you can at a big stage like
the
E3.
Internet day and age.
I mean,
any
I'll agree.
Announcement can get blown out of proportion.
Sure, but I agree. But I think when you're there in the moment and you say it like that, but then
I
again,
think that's the problem. Though, it got caught up in the moment.
Maybe I don't know.
Maybe it all is that way.
Then again, I'm sure it's all. I'm sure they do a trial run anyway.
Yeah. Which is.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they didn't know Greg was going to ask that. I feel like they probably did.
I'm sure they screened all the questions with Greg and
who knows
before.
Who knows?
Just for a clear and two-sided argument, I don't care about name changes at all.
Me either.
If you can change them and it works on, do it. If you can't, then whoopsie daisy.
For the people that want it, awesome. That's what I've been for. It's kind of like I was with crossplay. I don't stand in any particular side of it. I just see the benefits to Sony not doing it, not because of I don't want someone else to have that benefit. I think that this is going to hurt Sony more. And the business has to keep some sense of self-preservation.
I do think, though, that this, if launched, because have you seen the screen? Like when you go into it on the beta, it's a big red screen that tells you this.
Oh no,
okay,
but that's good.
It's a big red screen that's like, hey, don't do, like, if you do this, this is all the stuff. I do think that, of course, the first one's free, but then after that, it's $10, right? Or is it $5?
$5 for PS Plus, $10 for non-PS
right.
Plus.
So, which is crazy, because why would you change your name if you don't have PS Plus? Because you can't really. There's very select games you could play online. But anyways, maybe you're just not happy with it. But anyways,
maybe you don't have PS Plus at that moment.
It is a potential revenue stream for them. And I can't imagine
That's
hundreds
true.
of thousands of people who are going to pay, but then again, it's going to be free for the first time. But, if they pay to get it done again or if they mess up, then there is that chance of them making tons of money off of this. It's just the negative PR that comes with it. And it's just a general word of warning when you do it that there is very potential risk. It's almost... So I actually saw somebody...
but that's what I'm saying. As a business model, that's going to slow down as soon as people realize all the problems. So it's not really going to... It's by not doing it, they're not missing out on a stream of income because they'd have a very limited stream of income before it got to the point where people were like, I don't want to risk losing my game, so I'm just going to keep my name.
Yeah. And I saw
and then it would slow down and stop. See, now I'm sure Xbox having it there, and since it's so easy on Xbox because of the way they did everything...
I don't think it's free on Xbox either.
It's not.
Okay, it's $10
I think the first one might be free on Xbox as well. And I think it's the same after that. It's $10 for everybody.
I think it's only free that if you go with a suggested Microsoft name, but it's been 10 years since I really hardcore played on an Xbox. When I make names, I'm generally happy. Like I give a lot of thought in the names I create for my IDs. So I'm not ever really mad that I don't have my name. But what I will say, and we could kind of wind this down with this, is that somebody compared it to I can't remember if it was Twitter, Reddit, wherever I saw it, YouTube. Somebody compared it to rooting an Android phone. You could get some benefits out of this if you do it right. There's always risks that come with it, though, and you got to know the risk. And it is a very, if you have all digital games, this is a very hardcore risk for you to take.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you can revert back to maybe potentially save that library of games that you could just throw down the hole. Any final thoughts? Or are you pretty much done?
No, that's pretty much it. I just think it was a weird situation for Sony, and I still think that they would have been better off not doing it. So that's just kind of where I land for now until maybe I get more information as to why they felt the need to go forward.
These kinks and bugs are worked out when it's not the case.
If possible.
If that's possible, yeah.
And maybe that's the point of the beta. Maybe the beta is to see what's exactly, like when you do it, what happens, that we can follow the line and then maybe subvert that.
And that's very possible. And I'm like we said, I'm for it. Like, go for it. I'm not against it. I'm caught in the middle way more so than I was with crossplay. But Reader Mail time?
Reader Mail time.
For those that don't know, Reader Mail is the weekly segment of the show in which you guys ask us questions and we answer them live on air.
Can we get a little horn and go? Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun, fancy. Submit your questions on our Facebook group, Triangle Squared, a PlayStation Podcast, or our Twitter at Triangle SQRD, where you guys will see a Reader Mail tweet or post go up every Wednesday and every Friday. We take 2 from Twitter, 1 from Facebook, and we go ahead and answer those. This week's a little different because we have a couple more, just because that one's relating and then one was Reader Mail. I mean, the drop. But one is actually relating, very similar to another question. But if you don't hear your question answered, do not fret. We will answer them on the Reader Mail episode that premieres every single Friday. No, not every single Friday. I don't know what's going on with me right now. The first Friday of every month. So you guys are gonna see it on November 2nd.
Yeah.
So Liam wants to know what draws your most interest when a new IP is shown.
Wording is very important here. He says shown. So I'm going to use this to say
Revealed.
Most of the time a new IP is shown without gameplay. So with that, it has to be visually, how stimulating is it to me? Does the nature of what the subject matter is interest me? So like The Order. One of the main reasons that The Order spoke to me is I like that Victorian era London thing, and then they showed off enough in that thing to go, okay, there's some kind of a steampunk element here, though we don't know how deep. And then we kind of got word about the fact that it was probably werewolves, and that's what it looked like, and it was very eerie. So visually, it stimulated me. The lore sounded interesting to me, and the idea around the game sounded interesting to me. So all at once, I was like, this is why I'm excited for this game. And then you have... I'm trying to think of other examples of new IP when you go and you're like, I don't know about it. But I mean, I tend to look at, when I'm looking at something like that, how does it make me feel as a basic? Because you don't have enough gameplay. I guess the one thing you can say is that you can kind of guess gameplay based off of what they show. Like if you looked at Devil May Cry, let's just say that Devil May Cry 5 wasn't Devil May Cry 5, and instead it was just a Devil May Cry. It was a new series, and they were like, completely. Hey, here we are, but you saw that. I'd be like, okay, this is probably an action game. This is probably going to have it where you run around and to some extent you're hacking and slashing. So what goes on from there? And then you can kind of go, well, that interests me because I like those types of games. So my basic interest is there. Where it evolves on that is up for grabs, and then go from there. But which one's for you?
Up for crabs?
In terms of like how I'm saying.
Did you say up for crabs?
For grabs.
I swear you said crabs. But it's almost the same. So another good example for me is Shadows Die Twice, Sekiro.
Yes.
Because it was originally revealed at last year's 2017's Game Awards, and it was just a very close snippet of a trailer where you saw From Software pop up on stage or on the screen, and then you saw a bone twisting what is a mechanism. You know nothing about it, and stuff like that is actually my favorite because the mystery behind it is
it's so cryptic.
Yeah, and then when you finally see the reveal trailer, you're like, that's actually really cool. You know, you get hyped about it because you're excited to see what it is more so than if you want it. Like, I'm just excited to see what the gameplay is.
And I think the more basic answer that we skimmed over real quickly is, and it falls in line with that. You know that the real reason that you were that excited for it, despite the cryptic messages, was because it's From Software.
Yep.
So you have a personal, relationship with a developer. You build a pedigree in your own mind of what they can do, and when you hear about them, that's exciting. So yeah, I think that's the most basic reason. That's what excites you. They show a new IP, and then all the other stuff happens, they do it different ways sometimes. They'll show a whole new trailer and then only put From Software at the end. Or they'll put From Software at the beginning so it'll catch your attention.
It draws you
and then you're like, whoa. So
it's kind of like, I forgot what the name was, that PSVR game made by...
Daracene?
Yeah, Daracene. It's kind of like that where... we're not entirely too sure what it is yet. I mean, maybe now. They clarified in terms of the way it's going to be. Okay, but have they clarified if it's in Bloodborne's world or not?
No, but they never clarified.
I know, but that's the fun part about watching a new IP reveal. It's the theories.
To be honest, if they confirmed it, wouldn't you be a little like, it's more fun to be like, maybe it is anyway, and they just don't want to say it.
Yeah, that's kind of it's the theory guessing and the theories behind it all. That's really fun too.
True. All right, next question comes from Mr. Steve Bitto, and then a little addendum by Josh. It says, the Fallout 76 beta is getting hammered. Fallout 4 was disappointing. His opinion, but I think that's actually it's a weird... I'll get there.
If I had to rate like Fallout 4, it'd be like a 7.
Well, here's the problem with Fallout 4, is it was disappointing to a lot of people, but it's also the best-selling Fallout game and the best-selling Bethesda game.
Which is not good news.
So...
If you did not like it.
One of those things. But is it time for Bethesda to STFU? If you don't know what that means, then I don't know how to help you. And make better games. He says, not talking about the publisher, just Bethesda Game Studios. You wanted to clarify that. And then the secondary part of that is Josh Ayers saying, what are your thoughts on Fallout 76? So by nature of answering Steve's, I think we're gonna probably answer Josh's. So with that said, Fallout 76 is such a mixed bag for me because the idea doesn't even sound good to me personally, but I like to keep an open mind as much as possible. So with it, I was like, you know what? Maybe they know something we don't. Like they play tested this. Obviously, somebody somewhere who's a Fallout fan said that this is a good right. Fallout 4 may not have been a great game. I still played it and beat it. Yeah. I didn't do anything outside of that, so that's an issue because the thing about Bethesda games leading up to Fallout 4 was that as soon as I was done with the story, I would continue to play another 100+ hours somewhere else in the game.
What is my easy go-to answer for this, always involving games similar to sequels like this, is that it's not a good Fallout game, but it's a fun game. Very easy out. I mean, it's when you look at it at a core, Fallout 4 is as a game without attachment to the Fallout universe, is very solid as a post-apocalyptic open world survival style game. The story is somewhat lacking.
Perspective is everything. Yes, if this was not a Bethesda game, if this was not a Bethesda Game Studios game, and if it wasn't a Fallout game,
it'd be pretty solid.
I'd say both of those things true. If this was made by a different developer and it wasn't part of the Fallout series, you would honestly probably go, this is a pretty good start.
Oh yeah, but it's sad because this is the 7th Fallout game, 6th Fallout game.
Yeah, it depends on whether you count the Brotherhood of Steel PS2 game. So I'd say it's probably 7. It may be 6.
I'm counting that, and I'm counting New Vegas technically.
Yeah. So we have 1, 2 Brotherhood of Steel, 3 New Vegas, and then 4, and then this one will be the 7th.
Yeah, 76 will be the 7th.
So
I don't. In terms of like, is it time for them to just start making better games? I don't think their games are bad. I think their worlds can be bad. And
it's make better games as to what we know their potential is.
Well, that's the crazy thing.
That's what it comes down to, because it's in the context of other releases.
Do we know what their potential is, though?
Yes.
Give me a Bethesda game that launched in this past decade that did not launch buggy.
Well, that's a whole other scale because
no. Hold
on, I'm with what you're saying, but in terms of what he didn't say that Fallout 4 was disappointing because it was buggy. He said it was disappointing.
But
so on the base level, yes, they are buggy, and I'll give you that.
It's a very it's a very close correlation though of like these games they launch unpolished.
Sure, but here's the thing: despite the fact that Skyrim actually launched at a worse state, buggy wise, than Fallout 4 did, Skyrim is still a better game.
That's true, but it's still,
in my opinion. I mean, everything's subjective, but in terms of general reception too, I feel like more people are still warm on Skyrim, even though they've played it a million times. The joke isn't that it's a bad game; it's that they keep releasing it.
Yeah, and my big thing though is that make better games. Like it's kind of weird because in my eyes, all of their games in terms of quality are almost the same. When I walk away from a Bethesda game, I'm not really like it's weird. When I'm said and done, I compare it to other ones in my head, and I'm like, that's better than that, and that's not quite as good as this one. But then a year later, that changes. Because I look back on it again, and it's a little different.
It'll always be that way. But that's because you can textualize everything with what you recently played.
Yeah, within that time frame.
And it still messes with me. But here's what I will say. I carry my experience with Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim all with me, and I still fondly remember all those. To be dead honest with you, as a Fallout fan in general, Fallout 3 is not a great game to me. It's a good game. Fallout New Vegas is a better game by far.
I still need to play it.
Even with I keep forgetting you never played it.
No, I played it for like 6 hours.
But you didn't beat it. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I don't know if it was 6 hours.
But my point being is that you did that. But you have that game, and it was a better game, but it's still really not a great game. I don't think that Fallout's been great since Bethesda's had it, to be honest. Well, and I think that some of that comes from the fact that the Elder Scrolls is their series.
I think
they started it. Here's what I will say. I mean, sure, it can be fighting words. I don't care.
When it comes to Fallout 76, New Vegas specifically.
Well, New Vegas is a great game. But it's not to me what they were able to pull off with Morrowind, Oblivion, or Skyrim. And the reason why I say it that way, and the reason I say I don't think that Bethesda does as good a job with the Fallout series, is that it's not their baby.
No, and that's the
and
problem.
You see that with people getting mad about the Fallout 76 having story things that supersede other things, and then them having to try and come in and retcon and do all these different things that are trying to make it right, is that the lore is handled in such a different way because they came into a series that had already been established and they changed everything about it.
Oh man, why can I not think of the original developer's name? Starts with an L, doesn't it?
I thought it was Obsidian, which is who made Obsidian, New Vegas. Oddly enough, I may be wrong on that. I really thought it was.
But in my mind, I'm really curious as to they've announced 3 mobile games at this point now. Two mobile games.
For what, Fallout?
No, just for the
Black
series.
Isle Studios. That's who it was. Obsidian and Black Isle always make me think of each other, but Black Isle was the ones who did it. Yeah.
But I'm really surprised they have not made a Fallout game for phones that is a new isometric style game as it used to be. That is the same strategy
because
core.
It makes more sense in that style on a phone.
Yeah.
In terms of the current market,
I would not play a game like that on console. PC, yeah, I'd eat it up on PC.
Sure.
But my big thing is that I don't think their games are inherently bad. I do think that there is a big problem in the way that they rely on the community to play their games and almost quality control check them. Did you see the most recent tweet they did where it's basically like, hey guys, this game's coming out. There's going to be problems. You got to let us know what these problems are.
Well, it was the beta. So it was.
No, they're talking about the base game.
Oh, but the beta had the same note.
Oh, okay.
What's the note for the beta was, look, here's the beta. We know with a game of this size and scope, and definitely with it being new online and we haven't had as much experience there's going to be bugs and they can be anything. So we want you to come back. Now, here's the thing. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to own it. They're trying to come out and own the story. And here's the important
ahead of the curve when it comes to games like No Man's Sky.
Regardless of the fact that it's going to happen.
My elbow.
Sorry, but regardless of the fact that it's going to happen, they already know it's going to happen. Here's the thing: they did not give any kind of warning with Skyrim, and it came back to bite them hard.
See, that's crazy too, because
if you set the expectation, you go, look, guys, we're also you get the player base to feel like they're helping shape the game to an extent. It's obviously going to throw some people off. It's going to be like, whoa, the game is so bad that you feel like I need to help you make it better, because I'm not a game developer.
Okay, so that's my big problem with it, is that they're treating this game upon a full $60 release as an early access title. You play this game, we'll fix it, report what's wrong. I don't like that. That is a very unethical game developer personality, in my opinion.
I do want to say that's because this is based off of what I've seen. I did not see a tweet where they said the base game is going to come out and still be super buggy. Now, that doesn't mean it's not going to be true. I'm sure that's true.
I'll pull it up real quick.
But here's the thing. I could not imagine them making that statement, because that's a bold statement. because you are right at that point. It does feel. I just feel like if that's not true, then you're slightly over sensationalizing it. Not saying you are. I just want to see it.
No,
I'll and that's my biggest thing.
For those that don't, oh my gosh, why is that so small?
See, that was the one that I read about the beta.
Okay.
This is not talking about the final game. It would be a very bold statement for a studio to come through and a publisher to come through and say, hey, guys, we know that our games are like this. We want you to go ahead and pay the $60. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't change the fact that it's probably true. But to make the statement is ballsy.
No, it literally says it right here. Usually years after development, we finally finish, release the game, and take a break. With 76, we feel we have not finished, but reaching a starting line where all the new work begins. They literally just said this game's not finished.
Okay, but you're still taking what they're saying.
It's not out of context.
Hold on.
The game's not finished.
Let me finish and tell you. Let me finish and tell you what I'm saying by that.
End quote, by the way.
And the same thing about that. What he's saying is that by the nature of this being an online game that will continuously do stuff, it's like Bungie. Bungie traditionally made a game and then walked away. So they made Halo 3. They do the online, and then they basically kind of be like, well, the online's there. We're going to take a break. Well, Halo 3 had non-online components, but it also had an online component. This game is entirely online. You can't play it without being online. So what they had, the difference between this, it'd be like if Bungie said, hey guys, we're releasing Destiny 2, and then we're going to not work on the game at all for the next 3 months. So whatever problems are in the game, you can expect them to be there for the next 3 months while we take a break. What they're saying here is that the nature of this game is automatically so different from a single-player storyline where it's not surrounded by things, and then they make decisions based off of it. This is a game that going into it, they're aware that, hey, this can launch with any number of problems, definitely because it's online. And we saw Diablo 3 do the same thing where it launched and didn't even work the first day because the servers couldn't handle it. There's all these other problems.
Before server testing was
so
a thing.
Basically what they're doing here is they're saying, this is an online game that's continually going to evolve. We know that going into this is not the end of a game that we then later support with DLC. This is ongoing development past because Destiny 2 is essentially that. Destiny 2 is
the base game was finished.
Sure, I'll give you that in terms of
and it wasn't that. It was. I don't remember any bugs.
Is Fallout 76 going to have a traditional story at all?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. So again, it changes the thing.
It doesn't have NPCs at all.
How do you word what constitutes finished in a game? And it's a loop for them. It's like a catch. I'm trying to think of it.
They're trying to make it sound to me
like
they are pre-apologizing that this game is going to launch and it's not going to be optimized. It's not going to run well. It's going to have bugs, and it's your responsibility to help report them because they haven't. And they have it, and they say this here, where they say that we know we're opening up everyone up to this we know we're opening everyone up all of this new performance. Oh my gosh,
spectacular issues none of us have encountered.
New. It's just weird wording. When new spectacular issues none of us have encountered. What spectacular issues?
I think you need new glasses.
Well, no, this mic's also throwing off my peripheral. Some of which we're aware of, such as areas where performance needs to improve with a lot of players. Others we surely don't. We need your help finding them and advice on what's important to fix. We'll address all of it now and after launch. So this, to me, is them coming out and saying, like, hey, there are problems we're not aware about. Let us know. We're going to work on them. Sure. But it's coming at a $60 price tag.
Sure. And again, I'll give you that. But one thing I like that they put in here, which is important, is what is most important to fix.
That does not matter to them.
Hold on.
They're not going to fix what's most important to you. They're going to fix what's most important to the game.
What's most important to the vocal community as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do it, but it's the intent in the messaging that they've given. Look, all I'm saying here is that this is a naturally different game than what they've had. I get that by nature of that, there's a lot of different things they're going to have to do. They're going to have to support the game in a different way. They do have the loop on their side of what constitutes a finished game when the game doesn't have anything that can be considered finished. If there's not a story and it's all just supposed to be the world happens around you and that's what's fun about it, then there is nothing that you can use to constitute as the game being finished. Finished is wherever they decide that the finish line is.
If I pay $60 for a game and I'm having server problems day 1, then frame rate problems day 2, then crashing problems day 3, that game's not finished.
Sure.
There's fatal flaws with that purchase that I have made that have made the game unplayable. Therefore, the game should not have left development in that state.
Now, sure, and we don't know yet. That's basically what I'm getting at.
It's already been reported with the beta.
Okay, but
we all know betas nowadays aren't.
But beta,
betas.
that is the point of a beta to an extent, is to go definitely on a game like this. And that's normally what they use a beta for. We saw it with Soul Calibur, right? Soul Calibur 6's thing was, this is a network test. This isn't even a traditional beta.
Which is
all we're really doing is giving you the game so that we can go, hey, what is this network test? And I get that, but that's the point. The beta goes through this. They get to see, and just to flip it on something else, Call of Duty Black Ops 4 right now is having massive problems with its servers, and people are pissed about it.
They fixed that finally.
Okay, well, great, but it had it.
Yeah,
and that's my point. So somebody paid $60 for a game that's online only. So it's a very analogous game. It's a game that's online only that's going to continue development because there is no story. There's nothing to fall back on.
Right, but that's one flaw though. That they fixed within weeks of release. Where
but what I'm getting at is that again, we know that for a fact now. We've seen it come out. We know the game launched that problem. You are somewhat putting the cart before the horse by saying, and don't get me wrong, I do generally believe that this game is going to launch in a terrible state.
For sure.
You basically know because of the type of game it is. Also, the studio has a habit of releasing games that have problems.
Well,
now, but until we know what those problems are for sure, and until the game's released, I feel like it's. You can use it as speculatory, but you're coming at it and attacking it almost like it's already happened. Like it came out.
In the beta. There's no way they're.
That's not the final
problems.
Release, man.
No, that's just the stuff
that
they
is
say.
Not the final release.
That's the stuff they say to make you hope that the final release isn't that bad.
I just feel like you're being incredibly.
There's absolutely no way you can optimize an MMO like that 4 weeks before it releases.
Oh, so it's an MMO, but Destiny's not? We got countless problems we can get into with this.
I'll say there's NPCs in Destiny.
Okay. So what constitutes an MMO apparently then? My point is you're just slightly over sensationalizing.
I'm not
That's all I'm getting at.
And I like that you said I'm putting the cart in front of the horse when they are the ones
that
started this. And that's the problem.
But they're also, like I said, that's a PR statement.
As you could tell, Josh, I'm not excited for Fallout 76.
Me either. But I also never pre-ordered it. I was only going to pre-order it to get the stupid power helmet because I think the power helmet's cool.
That's my biggest problem, though, is they come out and at a $60 price point. You have Spider-Man, you have Red Dead, you have God of War's $40 now, but was $60.
Sure.
You have these games that are coming out.
Detroit Become Human, all these games.
You have all these games that are coming out at this price that are so well optimized, that are finished games, that have rare, if any, bugs and crashes. And then you have this game that comes out at the same price. Doesn't have a story mode. It's left up to you and friends to play this game and experience it for fun, and the game experience is most likely going to be seriously flawed. And then it is up to you to go to Twitter, to Reddit, to Facebook, wherever it may be, and tell Bethesda, hey, the boss that's over there in that one part of the map doesn't work. Or report it through their website, report it through the game. That's not the gamer's responsibility. There's an inherent flaw in the way that thought process is from when a developer puts that out. Now, if they said, this is early access, the game is $60, but this is not the official release. If you buy this now, in 1 year, you're going to get the full release with all problems being looked at and worked on. Perfect.
So the price is the problem, the messaging is?
The price and the message of this game is the problem.
But you just said if they came out with it being $60, but said you'll get the full game later?
Right. Well, the price...
I'm just trying to understand your argument.
The messaging is the problem. So because games like Ark have launched at not full price, but they have launched at a higher price than what the game
$40 or something, right?
Worth.
30-something dollars, I guess.
Yeah. And they were very clear and very concise with what it was that you were getting into. And it got to get muddy waters, too, when you consider what is early access and what is a game that's just launching, that's a work in progress, or even you could go as far as to say it a game as a service. But at this point, this is the context matters in which this is a AAA developer.
Sure.
This is a developer that we've seen massive things from, that is industry changing in certain gens that they have produced games in.
And I'll get into that in a second because I have something to say about that in particular and why we think so bad about them right now. But go ahead.
Well, there's always the meme that goes with Bethesda, but there's a way that you look at it, and it's very similar as to if you can name any developer, name any franchise they have done, and name exactly what they're doing with this. And if you put a $60 price tag on that game, it would be the same response from me. It would be the same exact general outlook. That is a very, very flawed way of thinking when you are developing a game. This game feels rushed. This game feels like it was trying to capture the magic that E3 2015 had, where it's like Fallout 4, here it is in 3 months. And that's basically exactly what they did. To issue a note on your website for all your fans to read, people think that other people are taking it out of context. They're not. They're literally saying this game is just a starting line and is not done. They're basically saying that the game is not the end product of what they probably envisioned it to be by this point.
So when I say over sensationalizing, the reason I say that is I think that you are creating your own intent that they had behind the messaging when we can't truly know what their intent was. Now I get that there's a perception,
if you
and you can say at that point that it's not quite necessarily a messaging problem as much as it's a potential perception problem, and that doesn't mean that it's your fault. What I mean is that the fact that the developer has had these problems to such an extent that it's easy for a large group of people to perceive this as the message.
They could know it possibly
that's an issue.
But then there's a problem in the PR stance in which once you create a statement that can provide speculation that is negative.
Sure.
And that's the big problem they have there.
And that's
I'm not going to get the game. Everything about the game looks clunky because the beta is simply at this point a network stress test. That's all it really is. And they've even kind of made it a joke upon themselves because they made the beta the break everything. They made it an acronym of basically break the game. So which again, wrong.
I actually think is a smart marketing move to get on top of it because you're constantly
we know what it's going to launch as.
Yes. Now, but the more that they can control the situation, and regardless of how it launches, look, this is what I'll say. Essentially, and this would be the end of this part, but I do want to get into something with Bethesda as a whole, in terms of a studio and why we view them a little differently now than we did, even though that nothing's really changed. But that's the problem. But regardless, I think what's going to happen here is as long as the beta does the job of making sure the game launches day one without server problems, and as long as you can get in and play the game, as long as the rest of the game, the bugs are not legitimately game breaking, even if they're annoying, as long as they're nothing.
What's game breaking though? Crashing?
As long crashing far too often, yes. A single crash, if you play for 30 hours, is not a big deal.
That's not a big
that
deal.
just happens. That happens in all games. I had it happen to me on God of War once.
Spider-Man did that to me once.
So it's that, you always have that one weird thing where for some reason you do the perfect thing that was just impossible to find.
And it breaks the game for a second.
Now, but outside of that,
understandable. That comes to territory.
Now, outside of that, as long as what I'm going to say game breaking in is, as long as you don't have anything that's like Skyrim level game breaking where stuff disappears so you can't continue missions and the game suddenly gets too big so you can't load your save accurately and stuff starts being weird and wonky. That's more than a crash. That is game breaking. And there is
very game breaking, yeah.
And now that won't happen quite the same way because it's not a local save file. I would imagine it's safe. So as long as the game generally works, I think that the fact that it's launching in this state is fine because they're trying to do something new and different. But moving on real quick, and then we'll move off of this into this is an episode of main topics at this point.
Because I don't imagine the main topic will be as long as that.
I think it'd be interesting. I wish we had somebody who liked Japanese games even more than we do to talk about this.
This would be a nice Liam call.
It would be great. It would be great. We'll have to do that later. If this policy doesn't get reversed, we'll have to do a bonus episode.
Steve, let us know in Discord in our podcast discussion thread what you thought about this and what does it line up more? Does it line up more with my thinking compared to yours? Is it more similar to than Brett's? Do you agree with what we're saying? And that goes for not only Steve who asked the question, but for everybody. Now,
hold on, because I think
that's right.
I think this one's interesting, and I think that you actually may agree with me on this one because. Okay, so Bethesda as a whole, and that's what he's saying, Bethesda Game Studios. So we're not talking about the publisher, because the publisher puts out some fine games. Wolfenstein 2 was a well-made game, regardless of how it got received.
Doom was
great. Well. Yeah, so Doom Eternal looks great. But
it really does.
When you think about who Bethesda Game Studios as a whole is, their games have always had these problems.
Every one of them.
Now, here's why things are different. They were, for the longest time, even going into PS3 and even leaving the PS3, one of the only people to do open world games with the amount of detail they have. With the proliferation of open world games with the new gen and the fact that nowadays with the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it's used to throughout PS3 and back, open world games would be few and far between, and they would come and they would break up all of the linear games. Nowadays, most games are releasing either full-on open world or with a compartmentalized open world and hubs, so they feel more open. So the thing is, competition in that space has gotten so fierce that because Bethesda has never changed really what they're doing from Morrowind all the way up to now, this comes back to perception. The way we view them is different now because when they didn't have competition that was blowing them out of the water doing the same thing, it was easy to overlook the problems because they had a very special game.
Yeah, that's the only game that had that offered this
now that we have
and detail.
Now that we have The Witcher come out, and The Witcher's got all the story and the side quests that you like from Bethesda. It's slightly different in the gameplay area, but it's okay, well, it's still a large game of a large scale, and it didn't have this many game-breaking bugs. It had bugs, had problems, but the developers were quick to address them. They were clear about messaging of, hey, if there is problems, we'll do them, and we're going to continue to support the game well after you think we would even be done with it. Anyway, we're going to redo the UI. The thing is that we've seen other developers take it the extra step. Red Dead Redemption is a perfect example.
No Man's Sky.
Red Dead Redemption has got so much stuff going on that, like you mentioned, that there's one bug about the dead zone or the acceleration if you go all the way up. Okay, again, some things just make it by. You can't do everything.
Right. No
but
game launches in a 100% perfect state.
But when you launch in a state like Red Dead or God of War did, where the majority of the game as an open world works, and you roll through it,
works.
Yeah, but when you do that, it makes when Bethesda comes out with a game that's still broken, it's like, what are y'all doing that's so different? And now I will still say this. Outside of The Witcher 3, and I don't have enough time with Red Dead to say about it, so I'm going to leave it away from this part of the discussion. The Witcher 3 is one of the only other games I can think of that's as in depth as any of the games that Bethesda's put out.
I'll tell you right now, from what I've seen on Red Dead, it's up there with them.
So but you know the thing about Skyrim and Fallout even a little less than Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls games is that Elder Scrolls games you can literally touch everything. If there's a plate, you can pick up the plate. Well, you can drag the plate, you can float it, you can move where the plate's at. That's a weird thing. Most games don't do that. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they get a pass, but as games continue to come out, Bethesda Game Studios. The reason I'm excited for Starfield is that they have a unique gameplay style that no one else has done.
It's an original design. It's an original game by them,
and it feels so unique. It gives them like the closest I felt to it, and even then, it's not as detailed in terms of what you can do with the world. Is Dishonored, and Dishonored's not going to come back around. It's still a Bethesda. No. It's not a it's a Bethesda game, but not a Bethesda Game Studios game. So when I say that, though, my point being is that the reason I'm excited for Starfield is in Elder Scrolls 6 is because Elder Scrolls obviously. There's that, but Starfield's a clean slate, but it's also, they are unique games in their own right. But the thing is that leverage that they used to have, and not leverage, what would you call it? That you used to give them a buffer of what you'd accept from them because they were unique. Whereas open world games come out and start to compete against what they're doing, even though they're unique, you start to take less and less. So I don't expect them to ever have bugless games. I just don't think that'll ever happen.
I don't expect anybody to have bugless games.
Sure, but I think that you have virtually bugless games. And I think
I would say
virtually bugless means that I think from what I've seen of Red Dead, it's been out long enough and enough people played it. I don't think there's anything that I think all of the bugs are. The only reason they're noticeable is because the internet proliferates the information.
Yeah, they're not like visual bugs.
Yeah,
like I said, I've said in Discord, I've rarely seen a frame rate, and that's because I was literally looking for a frame rate drop. But when you have big game studios like this, it's very off-putting to me. It doesn't give me any kind of optimism to buy the game or to treat their company the same, even though I have a history with that company and it's a very long and gratuitous one. But for our last question, we have our good friend Donovan. He says, in Tribangled Squared, and I noticed you fixed the error. In Tribangle Squared, a PlayStation Podcast professional opinion, do you think Claudio Sanchez, the lead singer of Coheed and Cambria, for those that did not know, would be perfect to write this story for the next major Destiny 2 expansion based on his existing works in the sci-fi universe?
And there's more.
So, why, and if not, explain.
So I will say this stemmed from a conversation we had while playing Destiny, and we were talking about Coheed by nature. So the reason that this question is so interesting is that if you don't listen to Coheed and you don't quite know, it's more than just the fact that he's a singer. He's also the author and the sheer world lore person who goes through the entire Amory Wars universe, which is what the Coheed albums are all based around, and they tell a story. So it's not just the fact that he's got it in music. He also, what he basically does is he has his stories and he looks at a way to tell them in music so that he can tell them, and then he also puts them out in a comic series called the Amory Wars. The comic series is not up to date with the music just by the nature of how he has to do it. But what I think is interesting about it, it basically came from a very loose discussion of what have we seen from them. I was like, okay, when you think about sci-fi and what they've done, I think it'd be really cool to go let a creator play in a genre they're used to, but in a world that's not their own. Right. And what are they going to do there? And the reason I think it'd be interesting, like I say, I think Destiny needs some kind of a shakeup. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that he would make a great story that would suddenly be the best story the game's ever seen. But I think if I had to say he's the perfect choice by nature of them reaching out to some weird area and going, here this is, here's an opportunity. And as long as he would take it, I think it's showing to let them have somebody else come in like they do with comic books. And it's like, with this character, we want to see what you would do with this character instead. So we're going to let you write this next thing. And how are you going to do this? Just like they do with shows. There's a different executive producer. We're going to let you take the character. Now, of course, this is still going to be canon. This is still going to be, but what are you going to do that differentiates the way that we play the character off in this thing? And I think that it'd be interesting to let him roll through and do that. So if you look at the stories he's already done, I don't think it's too far outside of the general idea behind what's going on. There's world-shattering things going on. This is very typical sci-fi stuff. So I think if you basically let him free and go, here's your character pool to work with, you can create a new character where you see fit. But he does have to play into all the rules that we've currently set up into this. And if you do break a rule, you have to write in a reason as to why it's going to break this rule that makes sense, that doesn't feel like you're just retconning, but instead feels like you're peeling back a layer of something we just didn't know yet. And I think that if you can pull that off and let somebody do that who... The reason I think Claudio is interesting is the way he views stories and utilizes stories is different from somebody who does story writing for a more traditional medium, because he looks at a story and takes it, and then he learns how to break it up and tell it in a way that he can tell you a part of a story through a 3-minute song or through an 8-minute song, whatever it is, and doing so in a way that, you know, you have an expectation when you're listening to music of what the lyrics are going to be. So the fact that he can kind of, when I say that, like what you expect to hear in terms of the structure and the writing of it and a chorus and how he's going to make that work out and where's the bridge going to come in and what information you're giving. Is there going to be a rhyme scheme? Right. You have all these different things. So I think that he automatically has to look at stories through a slightly different filter than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So letting somebody who does it in that all the time and has a long history of doing it.
It's very a unique thing to do as well. There are artists that do it as well, but just not as well as he does.
Well, a lot of artists do one. A lot of artists do one album that is a concept album.
This is literally it's his own cinematic universe told by albums.
Yeah, and they've only done one album after 20 years of being a band or some ridiculous stuff. Maybe it's not 20. It's like probably 18. It's pretty close to that though. But when you think about it that way, what ends up coming down
2018. That's 2000. Wow.
I don't think it was 2000. I'm pretty sure the first album came out in 03. So if it's 03, so 01 I think, because 03 was not worth getting into.
Enough years to go by to make me feel like old people.
Yeah, but my point being is that they've only recently, their album before the most recent one was the only one they ever did that wasn't a concept album. So it didn't have to do with the lore. The rest of the albums, including the new one they just did, are all part of the same universe.
That's Donovan's favorite album too, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh man,
The Color Before the Sun. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting way to think about things. I know that you listen to Coheed. I don't know if you ever got as into it as we did, to where you know the.
I know the general like.
Have you ever read any of the comics?
Yeah, I've read parts of the comics, and I've read a lot of not summaries, but like footnotes. I know the general gist of the series, and I understand it.
Gist.
Yeah, I don't know why GIF. I don't know what went on there, but I do. As far as Destiny goes, no. But I'll say why.
Yeah,
I have bigger plans for him for this.
Oh, you want Mark Wahlberg to come in and do that next story, don't you?
What if Mark Wahlberg was the voice of the ghost?
Gross.
Anyways, we talked about it like 10, 15, 20 episodes back. Have him develop a sci-fi story. Have him develop maybe even a trilogy. Claudio.
Okay.
Instead of limiting him to Destiny, because I feel like his spin on things would just not really fit into the Destiny universe that well. I'm sure he can allow it to fit in there, but I do.
My flip argument to that side real quick. Go ahead and finish.
I was going to say, what you want to do is you want to have him craft a trilogy story. Maybe even Amory Wars into a video game, but I don't want to do that. I want to do something completely original. You have it come straight from the depths of his mind, and you have it massive, you have it expansive, you have lore you can find throughout the game, and that is Naughty Dog's next sci-fi game.
Oh, you wanted to go to Naughty Dog.
Yep.
Ooh, boy. All right.
That's way better than Destiny, because I think that what he can lend to Destiny wouldn't work well in the Destiny universe, and I don't think it will work well in a first-person shooter.
The reason I think it would, and this is actually Forsaken based, the only reason this even came into my mind was because of Forsaken and the way they flipped the story. They decided to actually go dark, killing somebody, really doing permanent death in this situation, which I have problems with that anyway. If this entire time, I don't want to get into it. In case you haven't played Forsaken, we'll talk about this after. But there's certain problems with the way they set up in terms of how they've portrayed it throughout the rest of the series, that it's fine in Forsaken, but it doesn't make sense with the rest of the games that they've done. But
I'm curious what this is, because I think I might know.
We'll talk about it.
And I know what it is.
We'll talk about it. But with that being said, the way they chose to go with it, where it's dark and vengeful, it goes and like actually having loss, and definitely what they did with Uldren and the story going around there, I think that goes far more towards the sensibilities of what I think Claudio's good at. He makes desperate worlds, and he's really good at that, and he does it in a way where you can find these weird moments of light, but the overall thing always tends to be a darker world even by the end of it. So it's one of those things where, in my mind, I think that Forsaken has now set the tone that Destiny would need for a Claudio expansion to work in, because now we've already seen it somewhat be explored in terms of that particular type of tone in the game.
Well, and I do think somebody has made a really good fan theory of what is going to happen in Destiny 3. And I'm kind of gravitating to that because I really want that to be.
Are you talking about the rumors that happened? Where they're talking about the darkness?
Well, it involves the darkness. I don't know about any rumors I've heard.
We'll talk again after this.
But basically what it sounds like, and Callin in the raid of Destiny 2 kind of made this a thing of that you did not. No, I'm not going to spoil that just in case you never played Destiny. But anyways, it's almost like Avengers where you're getting set up with people building this massive team of people like Osiris. Now you have Anna Bray. And now you're well, don't really want to spoil that either. But you have this whole team of people to take on this one enemy. I'm so intrigued about what the darkness possibly is because in my head I think it's everything the Traveler has touched and left because that's how the Traveler works.
I have an even more interesting. It's not a theory, but it's what I think would be cool to see.
Guardians.
We'll see.
Okay,
but I'll talk to you about my idea. It's also cool. I think,
but. I think that I like the way the direction's going in my head. I just can't picture Claudio doing it any justice, is what I'm saying.
But that's only if he followed your direction. See, I wouldn't want him to follow any direction. I would just want him to go like, here goes what you know exists. How are you going to play off of that moving forward? But in case you aren't interested in Coheed or any of that at all, or Destiny, we spent a lot of time on Destiny this episode, so I apologize for that. But we are going to move on from that into the main topic, which is sadly Sony's new censorship policy that they are doing. And it kind of actually started from a series that was trying to come out over here, and they've had to continuously push their release date back. And they've had a lot of touches. So developers have actually been talking about Sony being very hard to work with lately in regards to how they want their censorship to work. Now, at first, it came, Saul, from... I can't remember the series it was. Sadly,
is it not the Hyper Neptunia series?
Maybe, but regardless, it was a series that had. It was only going to be a series that had come out over here plenty of times and had a relationship thing that built in. And even though they weren't really, it was still the same thing moving forward. They may have evolved it to a little bit, but regardless, it was the same basic idea of a mode. And this time around, the English side, so US said no, we don't want that. So you're going to have to readjust the game for censorship. Well, now it's coming through. The new policy is looking that Japanese developers will have to censor the games not only for us in the Western regions, but also in their home country, which is ludicrous.
It's nuts. Okay, so like, let me say this right now. You look at the Vita, and there is so many JRPG games that is this niche kind of lewd anime style games that honestly is one of the only driving forces keeping the Vita going to this day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I don't understand, and this is what really throws me off, is that this kind of culture is very, very common in Japan. This is something people have to understand.
I wouldn't even say common. I think that this is
the culture.
This is very showing of a very upward culture. Like there's a lot of people in Japan that this is normal for them. So this is not uncommon. Definitely, if we want to go outside of that, let's just talk about game culture for absolute sure. Game culture in Japan has had this for so long.
Well, and that's what they have to understand when going into a conversation about this kind of stuff is that every part of the world has their own cultures. That's not the same as yours. It's not the same as mine. It's different. That does not mean you have to agree with it. Nobody is asking you to agree with it, but that is a sense of a culture is something you should not ask to change. Now,
I'm going to go as far as to say that my thing about censorship in general is that why censor something when you can instead choose to either partake or not partake? And if you believe so far against what they're doing that you want to go out and exercise your right to fight against it, then you can do that. Not in the sense of censorship, but you can try and... It's interesting. Basically, you can just stop the developer from even going forward. That's by creating and walking around and giving reasons as to why you don't feel like this is an accurate thing, an adequate thing for people to be getting. And you can essentially have the market determine whether they're going to continue to be made or not. And you can kind of stop that stuff from coming just by getting people on your mental side. If you can get people to stop buying the games, they'll stop making them. But I don't believe that censoring them for the people that want to do that is an adequate way of handling that, because instead what you're doing is you're taking away something that doesn't hurt other people, in my opinion.
Oh, man.
But where do you stand on that in particular?
I do think that you're right. And that's the thing that goes with it as well, is that I just want to know the driving force behind this.
Honestly, I don't agree with it for America anyway. I understood, and man, people were mad about that first one for the game coming over to America that was going to be censored.
Trinity.
It wasn't that one. This is the newest one. But there's another game that was coming out.
Yeah, where it's like a ray of light.
Instead
of like
it was some kind
cleavage,
of
right?
No, it was something else. It was going to be that the whole game was getting delayed because of the fact that they had to go back in and change something in some kind of a dating simulator aspect of the game. But here's what it comes down to. People were mad and they were tweeting Sony, and they were doing the same thing where every time Sony tweeted, they were responding with something like, sure wish my game was like, oh, you're going to do this? It's like you censor my game?
Dude, that's kind of how it was with crossplay.
It was.
Yeah.
It's a weird tactic that they do, but it's an interesting one because in this particular case, I am more on their side. Regardless, look, in America, I can understand why if this Japanese game that's really based around the Japanese culture is coming out over here, and really it's just so against, or maybe it'd be hard to even rate over here that you have to go, okay, well, maybe you need to change this. That's one thing. If they were just changing and censoring due to America, I would be still like to the point where I don't agree with censorship, but it makes more sense to censor in Japan where these games are made for. Why?
Is a terrible move.
And here's the other thing that it does. It's okay. So one thing that you can do, let's just say that they had moved forward and made it to where these games weren't going to come out in America in that style anymore because it was just getting hard to rate and sell. Right? All right, that happens.
The market's still here's 600 billion times bigger in Japan, anyways.
But here's the other thing, though. People like Liam can instead opt to import the game from overseas where it's intact the way they wanted to experience it and experience it that way. But now, by making it to where Japanese people are having to follow the same thing as you are essentially cutting that off and that option off. And more importantly, you're messing with the gaming culture of Japan for no other reason than to apparently mess with the way it's going to go worldwide. I guess if this is trying to be, okay, maybe all games are going to go worldwide. If you make sure it's censored in Japan to fit us, or to fit America, then when the game eventually goes over there, you don't have to do any more work on it. I don't know if that's for sure what they're aiming to do, but it's a weird stance either wise. And I think it's another weird stance of Sony putting on these weird boots of where they are in control of everything again. And there are some upsides to that, but there's also downsides. I feel like part of Sony's success this generation is because they have these games. And here's the bigger thing. If these games get too hard to put on the PlayStation in the way that the people want them, and then people stop buying them, instead what they're going to do to get their fans back is going to put them on the Switch.
Yeah, and then that's going to be the problem, is that whatever system that is predominantly featuring those games is going to die, like the memory card fiasco, and they're going to be like, why did our system die? Because you made a dumb mistake again. There's an inherent problem.
Okay, I'm not following that. What do you mean exactly?
The same thing with the memory card of the Vita is one of the reasons it died. If you take these games away and a system dies, they're not going to know who to blame.
You're saying that the PlayStation died because of these, which it wouldn't. That's obviously
not. But I'm just saying if the PlayStation 4 decides to live on 2 generations because of these games, like the Vita is now, and for this not been a thing, or to stop midway through, and then all of a sudden PlayStation sales dip because of this, or just because all the active users
and
change.
You would imagine that it would dip in Japan.
It would
more than anything,
way more than anything. And then of course the niche audiences here in America and Canada and UK, wherever they may be,
it might be enough to drive somebody off the Xbox. So they go, well, the main reason I played the PlayStation is because they had these Japanese games.
Yeah, all my waifus
now,
over here. Now they're all gone.
Now I'll go to Switch, where Switch is now getting these games.
It's a big problem when
I don't know that Nintendo would let these games happen either, to be fair. It's just saying the opportunity is there.
I am a very strong believer that it is a massive problem and insulting when you try to change, control, or censor someone's culture. That goes for every culture on Earth.
I think it's weird. I think the same is true when you try and do those things to somebody's artistic vision.
That too.
Because again, like I say, even if it ends up that you don't like their artistic vision, there are other recourses that you can do to do something about that, or you can just choose to opt out of it. Because here's the thing: some people are going to like it. Because maybe you're perceiving it wrong. Maybe it's not speaking to you a way it's speaking to someone else. Maybe you're thinking it's going to speak to somebody in a way that you don't agree with. But guess what? That's not for you to say. And that's why I think it's really interesting. Now, of course, if you want to do some kind of action and go around and go, I believe that this is going to do this to people. This is why I want to talk about it so that maybe I can get you on my side and we can stop it. That's one thing. Yeah. I still don't necessarily. I mean, I just feel like that's the power of. That's the freedom we have in being able to roll around and kind of protesting something. Yeah, we have that ability, and we can try and change the company's mind off of that. But I think that it's really interesting to take someone's artistic vision, because it's going to stop a lot of games from even coming. Some of these games sell specifically on the fact of what they are. They're meant to be lewd. They're meant to be dating simulators where it's meant to be crazy, and that's what people buy the games for. And I feel like you're just killing a market essentially
Well, the crazy
for no
thing is
reason.
Steam gets hundreds of these games a month.
Yeah.
And, it's also an inherent problem.
Now you're moving people completely out of console gaming onto PC if that's what they mainly want to play.
Which is a very slippery slope, because I'm going to say right now, if you stop console gaming and you go to PC and you enjoy it, you're not going back to a console. It's very rare somebody goes and ditches console 100% and then goes to PC and enjoys it and then goes back to buying a console, unless it's for strict exclusives.
Generations apart is what I tend to find. A lot of people I know who dipped out of PS2, went to PC, they finally come back for PS4.
Yeah. But
now, not because of these games, but you could probably make the argument because there's less of a barrier between what comes to Steam and what comes to consoles these days. Definitely on a PS4, where a lot of these weird Japanese games do make their way to PS4, or Vita, or whatever.
And of course, with Games Pass, Xbox being a thing on at PC now. But the other thing I have a problem with is what is the point of the ESRB in this situation? These games could be rated for a mature audience how they should be. Why remove them at all? This
seems like Sony trying to control the marketing of how you view them as a company. This seems like somebody who's wanting to be like, well, we don't want to be known as the company that supports these weird, lewd, sexual games. Instead, we're going to be the company that supports these dark, killing people games, which, again, that just goes to show you that's a perception thing. How different is it really, honestly, to have a game where I'm killing thousands of people versus a game where I'm going and chatting up with this girl or guy and trying to get with them and they are dressed scantily? Okay, which one's worse?
Sony, you have a purple dragon as one of your mascots. You are not professional. You need to stop this. Like, I don't know if this is for professionalism. I don't know what this is for.
It's an odd decision. I mean, because obviously that right there is really,
it's like a puzzle you can't solve.
Yeah, that right there is obviously us being a little facetious with it. But I mean, realistically speaking, facetious. We don't know why this. And I feel like you talk about Sony needing to come out clear. There is no clear reasoning they've given for this.
Well, and another thing is that if they're starting here with these games,
where does it go? Where does it continue to go?
I was going to say, not only that, but I think that a lot of problems with these are small developers who can sit by the wayside and that Sony doesn't care. But my issue is that you're going to start here when you listen to me every week for 2 minutes to spout out a lot of bad games coming to the PlayStation from the drop. I can list 4 on the drop right now that have terrible looking art, are I'm not saying all of them, but some of them are very low effort made.
If it's supposed to be a quality control thing?
If this is supposed to be a quality control thing, where is this going to stop? Like, is this going to stop just here? Is this because of your image? You don't want people associating that you, a Japanese culture coming from these Japanese style, or a Japanese company coming from this Japanese culture. Like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. It's like if I was an American company and I said, ban hamburgers. Like, that's a thing. Like, you do in America, you eat hamburgers. People call us, what is it? Oh, man. It's like, it's to insult the obesity problem in America. And people say, like, burger lords or something.
I don't even know about that. But more importantly, I think the furthest into this conversation that I want to get into is the problems with censorship in beginning. And this is why I say I don't think that you should censor someone's art. And this basically comes down to the only reason that I can see a company, and this isn't censoring, this is a company choosing to back away from a product because it's no longer commercially viable for them. And that's when games reach over the M rating into the adult-only rating.
Now that
the
makes
adult-only rating is essentially gone because nobody wants to put a game out that's adult-only because you miss out on a lot of teenage sales where gaming is doing very well.
Yeah, which it still could be. And I think people do that, but I still think that there is a niche market there for those kind of games.
Well, there is, but you're going to see those on PC more than anything.
Yeah, I'm not into those games.
Neither am I.
I'm not even really into these games. I just don't think it's fair to limit somebody's artistic scope, the amount of money they take to develop these games. In the article, it says right down there on the bottom that this game could be at least released on Steam today, but because of these delays, and I think it is.
Regardless, they're having to move it past New Year now.
It was supposed to come out next week on Steam or something, Monday or something, which is tomorrow, or the day of this you're listening to this.
Yeah.
But it's a big problem to me, and it's something that is worth fighting for. Like the second you start censoring somebody because you don't think that your company goes with that, like if you work for that company, you're stuck.
Oh, it mentions it here, by the way. The game was a marvelous game, and it was Senran Kagura. I knew the name, and it was a reoccurring feature that they've had in all their games. Even if it had evolved, it was like, why now? But what I wanted to get at, and I guess you're kind of touching on it there, is where does censorship stop? And that's my biggest problem. Right. Because here, of course, you could say that maybe enough people agree on this one because they're like, well, I don't want to see lewd anime girls. Okay, well, maybe you don't. That's fine.
Yeah,
but here's the thing:
that you should advocate change.
Where does that continue to push? That's true, but where does that continue to push? What happens when this isn't the beginning? What happens when this happens, and then suddenly they continue to appease whoever it is that wants these changes to happen, and then not saying that this would happen, but what happens the day that suddenly The Last of Us 2 can't include that kiss scene because
don't.
That's a problem.
I'll say don't talk. Well, you add your joking at the end of that.
I get
what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
It's not a problem to
Just
me.
So everybody knows.
To clarify, no. What I'm saying is it's a problem to want to censor that.
Right, and
that's what I'm getting at.
Very big problem.
So
and I think that
if that's how, basically, okay. Because then what happens? If we can censor just anything we don't want to see, when you have enough of an uproar,
do you know why nothing like that?
It's a problem.
Do you know why nothing? Not talking about the kiss specifically, but do you know why none of these big titles would ever get censored? Because it makes them too much money.
Yeah. Well, and they're their games, right?
Yeah.
It's a different sense of control. Well, we can give our developers more leeway than we would give you.
Exclusives that are massive on the system, they would never go to censor those style games.
Sure. But I feel like that's what I'm saying too. And now we don't know the numbers that those games make, but I do feel like there is an argument to be made that
it's a big enough niche market that it's caused this much of an outrage.
They're the only people supporting on the console side of things. They're the only people supporting that market. So by doing this,
no. Switch actually has a lot of these games.
Really? Because I mean, it didn't.
For Nintendo, there is it's like a waitress game, I think. I watched a streamer play it live because I was curious, and dude, it's pretty raunchy. It's pretty lewd.
That's interesting.
Pull it up real quick, and then I'll put a link in the thumbnail the description.
Yeah.
And so you guys can see.
Well, anyway, I think that's one of those interesting things. And my biggest thing about censorship is that where do you decide to stop with censorship? Because if you feed into one, it's the same thing we talked about with crossplay, right? If you give an inch, be prepared to take a mile. So if you're going to set this in and you're going to say, here's the thing, you can't do this because we are just not going to allow you. How far do they push that? And what does that mean for gaming? What does that mean for new gaming experiences to try and push a social boundary? What does that mean? Does that mean a game like Far Cry 5, if it would have come out with being as religious and ambitious as they were trying to make it seem like it was going to be, would that game not have been able to come out because of the fact that it was trying to be a religious, post-mortem and looking at, it's not post-mortem, but a commentary on religion and where religion can go bad. It's just one of those things.
What is this series we're talking about? Senran
Kagura?
Interesting. There's one on the Switch.
There you are.
So this is a huge, not only is this just bad from, in my opinion, at my ethics, I think that you should never try to change something this important to people because you don't agree with it. Just don't support it. I always tell people this.
Or actively protest it. I honestly do that if that's what you want to do.
But it's not something you should seek, I was going to say protesting, in my opinion, is a goal to seek change.
It's a goal to seek. Yeah, but the difference is what's the change? Are you just going to... Really, with protesting, your goal is to change enough people's minds to be on the same side as you that it becomes no longer lucrative for these companies to continue making these games. Then you're not making them censor the games unless they go through and do that themselves.
Right.
But this is an outward force saying, look, you just can't make this game. If the company makes a decision to censor on their own, that's one thing.
Well, and it's not only that, but it's voting with your wallet. If you don't agree with the company thing, don't give them your money. And it's funny. I can only imagine. I'm going off of completely the caffeine right now. And exhaustion in this, so ignore me if you disagree. But I can only imagine
we always do.
The people who are complaining about these games own a PS4, and they're actively buying these games, and who are completely against or not for this kind of thing to be taken away. It's then don't buy these games that come to PS4 that you don't want. You don't want that in the game? Fine, don't buy it. Just do not support that company with your money.
And there are other Japanese games that are not trying to do that. So, I mean, there's other stuff you can do.
There's plenty of stuff. Star Ocean's on the system right there. Big one. Ni no Kuni 2. Big one. Dragon Quest 11. Just released 2 months ago. Big one. There's an amazing amount of JRPGs for the system, which is why a lot of people, I think, bought this system. And I do think that when you try to attack a niche part of this community, you see the outrage you see. Once again, neither one of us really play any similar style to this game.
No.
I think the closest I've ever gotten is Danganronpa.
I played the Sophie, Atelier, or whatever games once, and they're funny, but the gameplay's bad, so I don't want to keep playing.
I never played an Atelier game at all.
Yeah.
Or Atelier.
Yeah, whatever it is.
But
hardly remember the name. But.
It's just if this was any other kind of game niche series, I'd be the same. I'd be on the fence about. There are people who want gay stuff taken out of games. Why? Why does it affect you? Does it offend you that much? Then
don't buy it. Yeah, no, exactly. You get to choose what you do and don't participate in, and I think that's where the line should be. It shouldn't be on Sony to tell people that. But I guess unless
it's stuff like Postal.
The devil's advocate side of that is that, of course, they are a private company. And if they don't want their company to be shown and be, you know, equated with these super lewd sexual games, it is on them to do that. I just don't agree with it myself.
Not Postal. What was that game called that came out?
Hatred.
Yeah, that's it right there. Yeah, Hatred. The games that are made just specifically to do that, just to make people mad and offended.
And that game didn't do well because it was overly trying to, because it's not art. It wasn't like, what are we going to do here? Well, we're going to try and do art, but make people have a commentary on what this hatred is and what, like, you know, because you can still do that game, but have another reason. But the guys are just like, no, we just want to make a game where you do a bunch of crazy effed up stuff because we knew we could.
Innocent people, that kind of stuff is trash that shouldn't belong on the system.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go that far. It's just it's not art. It's somebody who's going in with an ulterior motive. They probably thought that people like violence in video games. We can just make a game that's just violent and it'll do well. No, because there's no meat to the violence. Why is the violence there? Can we talk about why the violence is going on? What's the end goal of the violence? You know, what's going on? God of War, right? It's like, well, the violence is a means to the end of stopping more violence that could cascade further.
I do think there's a fine line though at that point when you're making something just to be edgy for the sake of being edgy, to just do it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying the game shouldn't be allowed to exist, like we talked about. It's just they're going to fail on their own merit, and Hatred did fail on its own merit. It didn't do well.
The game only came to PC, didn't it?
I think so. Yeah, Steam.
Okay. Which is interesting because that kind of circles back to these games not being allowed on Steam, but that game could.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One of those weird things. But anyway, let us know your thoughts on these stuff. Do you agree with censorship as a whole? Do you think the censorship should be something allowed? Do you feel like I do and don't think the censorship should be something that's pushed? Just let people make what they want, and then you decide what you do and don't give into. Really?
Where does your line cross? Where do you personally have the issues with games? Like for me, it's nonsensical stuff like Hatred. But is this style game one of yours that you think should be on there? Do you have that line? What is your pushing point?
And more importantly,
how do you plan a protest?
Yeah, and more importantly, how do you feel about this actually affecting Japanese gamers, where it's going to affect Japan the most? It doesn't have as big of effect on us and our market. I think that's one of those weird things. But you know what? Japan's small. When you get 500,000 sales on a game that's made for a market that's primarily, like, they know what market they're making to, it's a very odd thing. You're creating less targeted markets, which is not a great thing, you know. Diversity is the name of the game, and when you have every kind of thing on your system, you do even better. So I think it's more of a weird thing on Sony's part. Do you agree? Do you think Sony's in the right to do this, or do you think it's going to have some kind of a negative effect and be a stepping stone towards something even more extreme? And maybe, like we always say, is this Sony going back to their stubborn, we are the ultimate controller of every single thing that happens, and we're going to tell you what you want instead of listening to what you want. And
my wallet will know exactly what I want. And it won't be anything of that.
Yeah. Anyway, with that being said, Saul, I think that we both have everything we wanted to get out. So until next week, this has been Triangle Squared. Thank you
guys.
Thanks to our patrons, Chad V, Dan Barber, Josh Jarrell, Mikey 12. My name is Dan, Douglas Below, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Travis Below, Blake Popst, and Eduardo Palomino. If you would like to support us on Patreon, the link is in the description below, but we thank you for your time.